Okay, everyone, thank you. Welcome back to the day 2 of the July 27th through 28th, 2022 board meeting. My name is Sung-Oh, president of the board. Before we convene, I'd like to remind everyone present that the board is a consumer protection agency charged with administering and enforcing pharmacy law, where protection of the public is inconsistent with other interests sought to be promoted. The protection of the public shall be paramount. This meeting is being conducted consistent with the provisions of Government Code Section 11133. Participants watching the webcast will only be able to observe the meeting. Anyone interested in participating in the meeting must join the Webex meeting. Information and instructions are posted on our website. As I facilitate this meeting, I will announce when we are accepting public comment. I've advised the meeting moderator to allow 3 minutes to each individual providing comments. This approach is necessary to facilitate this meeting. Before we get started, I would like to staff moderating the meeting to provide general instructions. Moderator?
Thank you, Mr. Board President. Before we get started, I would like to remind board members and senior staff who are not speaking to mute their microphone. If I detect background noise during the meeting as a result of unmuted microphones, I will interject with a brief friendly reminder or simply mute the microphones. To facilitate public comment, we will be utilizing the Webex question and answer feature, also referred to as the Q&A panel. When the board president reaches a point in the agenda at which public comment is appropriate, public comment will be requested. At the board's direction, I will turn on and announce the opening of the Q&A feature. It is not necessary to identify yourself in order to make public comment. Please note that the Q&A feature is being used only as a means for members of the public to represent that they would like to make a verbal comment. Once given permission to unmute, the member of the public may unmute themselves and verbally state their comment. The Q&A feature is not to be used for typing out questions or for board members to communicate with one another. If any attendees utilize a profane name, they will not be called upon to prevent members of the public from being subjected to profane language. While you are free to express criticism or negative views for the sake of members of the public participating on the call, please do not use profane language when making public comments to the board. And with that, I return the floor back to you, Mr. Board President.
Thank you, Tricia. I would like to take a roll call to establish a quorum. Maria Serpa.
Licensing member present.
Thank you, Maria. Jake Patel. I believe Jake is not joining. Renee Barker, I believe is not joining today. Indira Cameron Banks.
Public member present.
Thank you, Indira. And Jesse Crowley.
Licensee member present.
Thank you, Jesse. Jose de la Paz. I believe Jose is joining in about 10 minutes. So we will announce when he comes on. Kula Koenig. I'm not sure if Kula is joining. Ricardo Sanchez.
Ricardo Sanchez, public member, present.
Thank you, Ricardo. Nicole Tebow.
Licensee member, present.
Thank you, Nicole. Jason Wise.
Morning, President O. Jason Wise, public member.
Good morning, Jason. And I am here. Quorum has been established, but we have a very thin quorum, so please let us know if you are stepping away for throughout the meeting. So we'll have to keep a tight, close eye on our member who's on the meeting. So we're going to go to agenda item 13, presentation on the Pharmacist Recovery Program as required by pharmacy law. The board operates the Pharmacist Recovery Program to rehabilitate pharmacists and intern pharmacists whose competency may be impaired due to abuse of alcohol, drug use, or mental illness. The intent of the program is to return these pharmacists and intern pharmacists to the practice of pharmacy in a manner that will not endanger the public health and safety. I'm pleased to welcome Virginia Matthews, Project Director for Maximus, the board's vendor responsible for administering the Pharmacist Recovery Program. Ms. Matthews, thank you so much for coming, and the floor is yours. And just for the record, I believe our member Kula just joined as well. But
good morning.
Please take it away.
Okay, good morning, and thank you for inviting me to come and speak with you. I'm glad to have the opportunity to be here. I'm going to share my screen. That going. And we should be good. And I have a few things I'm going to talk to you about this morning, cover a few things that I think are important, and talk a little bit about the program in general. Introduce myself as the program director. My name is Jenny Matthews. I'm a registered nurse and have a degree in business. Ann Morales is the case manager for the program. She's been with us as long as I have, and both of us joined the program back in 2007. And she's been the case manager for the Board of Pharmacy that entire time, with about a 6-month period of time where she left and moved out of state, but she came back and working with the program again since then. She's having difficulty joining the Webex, so she's not on with us now. If she can join us, she'll be there to back up and answer any questions that you might have that I can't answer, but right now she's not on the call. She's trying to get in and join. So we'll see if she can join us. I wanted to give you a real quick overview of Maximus, the vendor. We are in 9 different countries across the globe. And so the program that we have here is a tiny little piece of what Maximus does. So I just wanted to kind of give you that big picture of who we are. We're a very large company traded on the New York Stock Exchange. We are for profit, and 24 federal contracts, and in all 50 states. Maximus is the largest provider of conflict-free services. And what that means is that we don't do any private or insurance paid contracts. So they're all government contracts. We only do government work. And so that means that we don't have any conflict of interest. They want to make sure that it's purely working with government agencies. And in the United States, this is the type of work that we do. The largest of that is Medicaid and Medicare enrollment brokers, a lot of call centers, provider services. And the next largest work that we're doing in the United States is assessments and clinical work. And we are, in our program down here at the bottom, in that other health-related projects, the one in California, but we're moving into the clinical services realm and getting absorbed by the 21 assessments and other health-related services. And so we're getting into a division that's more understanding of what we do, and we're really kind of moving into things that are, I think, better support for us. We've been in the Health West division, divided by geography. And so we're going to be more involved now into more clinical work. And so I think it's a good thing for us. But the division does clinical assessments in skilled nursing facilities, behavioral health. And there's a federal contract that we do for the VA that does assessments as well for active duty military. So it's interesting work that the company's kind of moving into. And in California, we have, under the Department of Consumer Affairs, 8 licensing boards. So that's the contract that we're in now that we're talking about here. And the largest that we have is with the Board of Nursing, and that's about 300 participants. And next after that is with the Board of Pharmacy. And so that's the next largest group that we work with. So we have 8 licensing boards, and you can see who those are on the screen. And that's all under one contract under the Department of Consumer Affairs. So that kind of gives you, from largest to smallest, kind of gives you an idea of who we are. But in the Maximus picture, where we have about 40,000 employees, there are 13 of us working with this particular contract in California. So we're just a tiny little drop in the bucket in Maximus. So I wanted, anybody have any questions about that in general? Who we are and how we kind of fit into this? Okay. I wanted to talk about substance use disorder also kind of quickly, but just to kind of give you the context of how we work in the program and how we fit this particular program in. The American Society of Addiction Medicine, ASAM, definition of addiction, this is their short version of their short definition. That addiction is a treatable disease. And if you don't take anything else away from my discussion today, I think the most important thing for you to take away is that this is a disease. This isn't a weakness. This isn't a character flaw. This isn't a behavioral disorder. It's a chronic medical disease. It affects the brain and complex interactions in the brain circuits. And I think it's really important for people to understand that, and that the behavioral changes that you see with individuals who are dealing with substance use disorder are a result of those changes in the brain. And it results from genetics, it results from their environment and the individual's life experiences, but they are brain changes, they're chemical changes. And people with addiction use substances and engage in behaviors that become compulsive. And they often continue despite the harmful consequences. And that's kind of one of the identifying factors. We know that they continue to engage in that addictive behavior, whether it's using a substance or engaging in gambling or sex addiction or any other harmful behaviors, despite the consequences that might be destroying their lives. And they recognize that. They know that these are harmful consequences, but the compulsion to continue to engage in those behaviors is so powerful. And again, it's because those chemicals in the brain are driving it. They're powerful changes that are happening, which is a whole other presentation. It would take a whole other couple of hours of talking with you about what that means. And the preventive efforts and treatment approaches for addiction are generally as successful as those for other chronic diseases. I see that somebody had a question. I saw a hand raised there for a minute. Moderator?
I think that's our member, Jose. Tricia, if you could just promote Jose, please. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Go ahead, Ms. Matthews.
Okay. So back to prevention efforts and treatment approaches for addiction are as successful as those for other chronic diseases. I think it's important to recognize that relapse rates and the chronic relapsing nature of substance use disorder is on par with other chronic relapsing diseases. And if you see the chart, you can see that it's on par with other diseases like hypertension, asthma, type 1 diabetes, substance use disorder. They range in that 60%, 50 to 70% range of relapse. And that this, again, I want to drive home that it's a chronic relapsing medical disease. Again, back to the ASAM definition, it's that inability to consistently abstain from that substance or that behavior, impairment in the behavioral control. It's marked by cravings, diminished recognition of problems in their own behaviors so that they don't necessarily recognize how their behaviors have changed or their relationships have changed, and the people around them recognize that, but they may not recognize it. And dysfunction in their emotional responses. And without treatment or engagement in recovery activities, it's also important to recognize that this is a terminal illness, that this is going to result in disability and or premature death. And the death is a result of possibly motor vehicle accidents or from that chronic toxicity of the substance, that chronic bathing their body in the toxic substance that eventually results in a terminal outcome. The risk for healthcare professionals is not that much different from what it is for the general population. So 10 to 14% of the general population is diagnosed with a substance use disorder at some point in their lives, and it's 10 to 15% for healthcare professionals. They are exposed or have easy access at times to substances, but the risk of relapse that I mentioned a few minutes ago at 40 to 60% of the general population. We know that in our program, the risk of relapse is around 12%. And that's in the first 4 years of participation in the program. And the reason that our relapse rate is as low as it is, and that's consistent across programs similar to ours across the country, is because of the monitoring and the case management and the support of the program. So that tight oversight and monitoring helps to maintain that relapse rate at a lower level. Most of the relapses occur during the first year, about 75% of them. And of those, about 80% of that 75% occur during the first 6 months. So we increase our program activities, and we increase our level of monitoring, and we increase our expectations of what the participants need to be able to do during that first 6 months, or first year, so that we're paying closer attention because we know that the risk of relapse is high. They're usually in treatment during that first 6 months, and we're communicating with the treatment providers. Want to mention at this point, we're not a treatment provider. The program doesn't provide the treatment, but we oversee the treatment. So we're able to coordinate the care and provide the case management. And the progression of the relationship between the person and the substance is really the issue. So it's not the substance, it's the relationship. So if you take a look at this chart, it's a little bit complicated, but I want to walk through it with you. The baseline, the green line, is an individual's baseline, that, normal. And if you look at stage 1, you think of maybe college kids, you think of maybe kids in high school that are beginning to experiment with substances. They're at that normal stage. Their priorities are all of the priorities that you might expect: family, friends, school, job, normal activities. And they might start experimenting with using a substance. They start learning how it feels, how to control those highs or the mood swings, what that level of intoxication feels like. It's a freedom from stress, and maybe it feels good. They go from their normal stage to the high and back to their normal. Maybe they like it, maybe they don't. Maybe they walk away from it and never come back to it. But those that enjoy it might move on to stage 2, which is more of a routine use. They've learned, they begin to learn how to control it. They might start experiencing negative consequences. This is where they might get their first DUI. They start having an increased tolerance, and this is where they start challenging their level of tolerance. If you think about, especially about kids in college, this is where they start challenging each other for their level of tolerance, who can drink more. You might see hazing at this point. This is where they start seeing who can tolerate more at parties or hazing rituals, and they start having negative consequences from that. You start seeing more hangovers. They might start missing work or school, and their priorities start to change. So school's not as important. It starts dropping down on the list of priorities. Their friends start to change. They lose contact with some of their older friends that maybe aren't as interested in using substances with them, and they start connecting with newer friends that are interested in that. Other activities, hobbies, sports, and other things start to drop down on their list of priorities, and that substance starts coming into play. And doing activities while using their substances becomes more important. So going to movies, going to parties, going to activities under the influence becomes more important. And that stage 2 can last a long time, especially during those college years. You might see that that's something that's going on for a long time. Stage 3, that abuse stage. This is where we're talking about very high levels of substance use. You're seeing loss of control. This is where their baseline is much lower. They use, but never quite get to that same level of high that they did those first few times, especially with methamphetamine. And I've heard it said that they never get to the first time. They're always chasing that first high. It's never as good as it was the first time. But their baseline is much lower. They seek it, and then they come back down and return to a much lower baseline. This is that dry January where they're challenging themselves to go 30 days without drinking, and maybe they can't. Or a wedding comes up in the middle of the month and they realize that they, why would I want to go to a wedding and not drink along with everyone else? And so they don't make it through that 30 days without drinking because, of course, it made sense not to. And then they begin to lose some self-esteem, and they've started breaking their own self-rules. Their values are changing. They start feeling bad about themselves, and they start recognizing that maybe there's a problem with their drinking, but there's a whole lot of denial going on there, and they don't want to accept that. So there's a lot of conflict. Priorities start to really change, and getting the substance becomes very high on that list of priorities, and family and friends and other priorities drop off. This stage also can last a long time. Lifestyle changes, preoccupation with the substance begins moving in there very high on what's important to them. And then this is about the stage where we see people coming into our program very often. This is where they've kind of lost control of their lives and of their substance use. And so this is where they start getting caught. If they're diverting substances from the workplace, they may get a second DUI, or there are they have less of a control of using the substance publicly. And so this is very often where we'll see them come into our program because they've not been able to control kind of that public image. And then the fourth stage, that severe addiction stage, they're just using to survive. And it's been described to me as a feeling of having a plastic bag over their head where they're just trying to get some air, that feeling of they just need the substance to survive, to breathe, using to reach normal. They've lost self-esteem. There's a very high risk of suicide at this point. If they've been in and out of treatment, the other thing that is a very high risk is accidental overdose, because they go into treatment, lose some of that level of tolerance, come out of treatment and try to return back to their prior level of use, which can result in an accidental overdose because they don't have that level of tolerance. And so they don't realize that they can't use like they did before. Another risk at this point, you hear about the fentanyl on the streets now, it's so prevalent. And fentanyl is involved in so much, and many of you are pharmacists, I know you're aware of what fentanyl is, but being worked into so much of the medication on the streets at levels that aren't adequately measured or dosed, and they don't know what they're getting, they don't know how much they're getting, and so it's very easy to overdose with amounts that they don't realize what they have. So that's a very high risk at that point as well. And the priorities become getting the substance and getting more. Are there any questions or comments on any of that? Pause for a moment there.
There's Jose. No, this
Well-
now sheds a lot of light into the process, which is good when we hear of someone going through a program. Probably at what stage did this occur, and just for me, it's enlightening. So thank you.
Yeah, it can be anywhere. Clearly, they can come in anywhere in the program, but most often it's that between stages 2 and 3, most often at 3. But obviously, it can be anywhere they can be referred in. But usually, it's where they start losing that control and that public image kind of thing.
Ms. Matthews, we can take question at the end of the presentation.
Sure.
So,
Sure.
yeah.
We can.
Thank you. Thank you for offering.
Sure. And I wanted to talk a little bit about cross addiction. I just wanted to insert this here because it's an issue for us, and I understand that we've had just in this past year 2 of the pharmacists in our program experience this. Cross addiction is where an individual who has a dependence on one substance but loses access, or their drug of choice is not available to them, substitutes a different drug or substance. And it's very often alcohol in place of something else. And so, those individuals in our program, maybe they've been diverting opiates, or they've had a dependence on some heroin, opioids, other substances that are no longer easily accessible, but cannabis, alcohol is legal in California, so it's easier to obtain, and they might substitute one for the other, and they have a cross addiction. And so we've had just this past year a couple of pharmacists that substituted alcohol for opioids in the year in the program. So it's not that uncommon, and just wanted you to be aware that that does occur, and we do see it happening in our program. And then driving under the influence. So I want to talk about that a little bit because it's a huge problem and often underplayed. And so I want to make sure that it's clear that this is a significant issue here in California. In California, you can get a DUI for driving under the influence for impairment by any drugs, and not just alcohol, including marijuana, and with a blood alcohol of 0.08 or more. Unfortunately, they can't really measure anything other than alcohol. They measure the blood alcohol of 0.08, and any other substance is more difficult for them to measure. They can do field sobriety tests, and they look at behaviors and balance and eye control and slurring and things like that, but they can't really measure breathalyzer or other things in the field. And so they can do blood tests, but there's always a delay. Your body's begun to metabolize some of that. And with marijuana, the impairment is difficult to measure in the field, or even a little bit later down the road. So it's kind of a moving target for them to determine impairment based on those substances. So it's important to be aware of that. But so the one that they really have a handle on right now is blood alcohol. So important to know, when someone is arrested for a DUI, it does not necessarily reflect the scope or the pattern of use. It just tells us whether or not it was measurable alcohol that they had, and anything else is kind of a shot in the dark. And the first offense is not the first time. Move over here to the right on this slide, and you'll see that the statistic that comes from Mothers Against Drug Drivers, an average drunk driver has driven over 80 times before their first arrest. I'll let that sit with you for a minute, because we hear it over and over again. This was the first time. I was coming from a wedding. I was coming from my graduation party. I was coming from a party. I never drove I never drank and drove before. I've never done it before. The average drunk driver has driven over 80 times before their first arrest. Average. Sometimes more, sometimes less. And of course, there are times when it has been their first time. But there are times when it's been more than that. So we have to be skeptical. We have to listen, and we have to give them some consideration, but we also have to be aware that it's highly likely that this isn't the first time that they've been driving under the influence, impaired, maybe not caught. 50 to 75% of convicted drunk drivers continue to drive on their suspended license, and about 1/3 of all drivers arrested are repeat offenders. And according to Mothers Against Drunk Drivers, every day there are more than 300,000 people on the roads who are driving while drunk, and only 1% are arrested. That's in the US. So it makes me think about not wanting to get on the road. So what is a standard drink? Because I think a lot of people aren't aware, and that's part of the problem, because there's a lot of denial, there's a lot of belief that maybe they're really okay to drive. 1 12-ounce can of beer at 5% alcohol, an 8 to 10-ounce glass of beer, because the craft beers, the poured beers, tend to be stronger at 7%, is a smaller amount. Wine at a stronger concentration of alcohol is a 5-ounce glass. That's about half of a wine glass, not the full glass. Going down to the shot is about 1.5 ounces, or a one glass, and those are all equivalent to each other. So it's easy to forget the amounts and what that means in terms of a standard drink. You've all seen these charts. There used to be inserts in our driver's license renewal and our car registration renewal. So you've all seen these charts. But if you really look at them and think about that, it doesn't take that much. Just a couple of drinks and put you into the impaired or legally intoxicated range. So it's that awareness and that understanding that it really doesn't take that much. And that when you're talking about these drinks, this is based on those same measures. You know, a single beer or a single glass of wine doesn't take much. And this is a chart that shows the stages of intoxication based on content. And I wanted to mention that now this comes back to that 0.08 is way down here at the euphoria stage, but it's not much. And we get so many of our participants coming in the program that have a DUI, and we say, well, what was your blood alcohol when you were arrested? I don't know. They can't tell us. And I can't understand why they don't know. They have to have been told at the time they were arrested, at the time they went to court, at the time that they had their settlement. They had to have been told what their blood alcohol was. They don't seem to want to know what it was. But it's important for us to know where they are with it. So again, a 0.3, 0.4 puts them into coma and death. We see 0.18, 0.25. These are not uncommon levels coming into the program. These are not to be taken lightly at all. And then there's a couple other things I wanted to mention about alcohol for you, just to be aware. And this is something in our program that, again, is not necessarily enough to be associated with a DUI, but is something that we take seriously. And all of our drug tests measure for alcohol, because of the cross addiction because alcohol is so prevalent. So we talk about kombucha. It's a fermented drink. You may or may not have heard of it, but it's kind of a big deal in California. Made with bacteria and yeast. It's a SCOBY, a colony of bacteria and yeast that looks like a mushroom that sits on top of the tea. The trick is with kombucha that it depends on who's making it and how it's made. So it's commercially produced and sold at grocery stores is 0.5% alcohol and marked as non-alcoholic, and people give it to their kids. Traditional kombucha is 1 to 2% alcohol and can get up to 3%. That does have alcohol in it. And that needs to be listed on the label. But there also is hard kombucha or high kombucha, and that is above 3%, which is equivalent to some low-level beer or low-level wines. And they sell that at Costco. And yeah, that's to be taken pretty seriously, and you don't want to give that to your kids. Well, maybe you do, but it's not a good idea. And so we have on our list of, do not, we have a list of alcohol containing products, and kombucha's on that list. And so many of our, we probably get 1 or 2 a month of participants who test positive for alcohol, and all they had was kombucha. So we say, that's on our list of do not use, because you don't know how much you're getting. So we give them a list of common products containing alcohol, and everyone's always surprised to see varying amounts of alcohol in desserts, in alcoholic beverages, in food such as sherry, wine, pasta with vodka sauce, champagne vinaigrette, vanilla extract, rum extract, wine vinegar, soy sauces, kimchi, sauerkraut, anything that's fermented, hygiene products, hand sanitizer, and they can be absorbed dermally or inhaled. The fumes from hand sanitizer can also be produce very low levels of alcohol, enough to give us a positive result. Antibacterial wipes and cleaning products, insect repellents, all of those, and they're on the list. We give the participants a list, giving them a warning about what has, and we're looking for ethyl alcohol. Go back to the DUI issue. The California has implied consent laws, specifically you agree when you get your driver's license to take a blood or breath test if you're arrested, and if not, you're assumed to be guilty. So you face license suspension for 1 to 3 years, depending on your previous record. Jail time and fines can be up to 6 months, up to 96 hours to 1 year, or $1,800. In California, the DUI conviction stays on your record for 10 years. And your license suspension, your license can be suspended up to 3 years for the third offense. And they need to be taken very seriously. We do see a wet and reckless, and it sounds kind of cute. And my lawyer got it reduced to a wet and reckless. And so it's not that serious. And very often the participants will sort of try to convince us that it was just a wet and reckless. All that means is that they had a plea deal, and they had a good attorney, and they reduced it to a wet and reckless driving charge. It just means that it was their first offense, and they managed to reduce the plea. But it's still up to 90 days in jail and up to $1,000 in fines, and they still have to complete their alcohol awareness program. That's nothing like our program. And if you hear people that have gone through a court-ordered diversion program or a PC 1000 or one of the programs that's offered by the courts. It doesn't compare to the type of program that we offer. And it's very casual. It has very low level of requirements. The education class is a combination of lecture and films, has some group sessions and individual interviews, 3 meetings of 15 minutes each. They're required to go to 12-step meetings, although I think the level of monitoring of that compliance is pretty loose, and there's no treatment requirement, and they can have point of care testing. So it's usually like a urine dipstick testing. I knew someone that was in a program like that, and they sent him to Walgreens to get a drug test and bring it in and do their drug test, which is completely ineffective because they get their own test. They know when it's going to be. They can cheat the drug test. And that individual used synthetic urine because they knew when the test was going to be. So it was completely ineffective. So those kinds of programs are just check the box, not as effective as of what we do. And I'm going to talk a little bit more about how we do what we do in a minute. And in California, you can get a felony DUI charge if it involves certain factors like 3 prior convictions or a serious injury or death. So important to also know that it can be elevated to a felony. And let's add cannabis to the mix because this is California. Cannabis affects alterations in reaction time, perception, short-term memory, attention, motor skills, tracking. And the detrimental effects vary in a dose-related fashion. So important to note that because California has legally available cannabis at retail, that they range up to 90% THC in the concentrates. And so if you're talking dose-related, you're talking some pretty significant dose amounts, and that the detrimental effects are more pronounced with highly automatic driving functions than they are with the more complex tasks that require conscious control. So cannabis affects the opposite of the tasks than alcohol affects. And so when you combine the two together, they eliminate the ability to use the compensatory strategies that one has for the other, and results in impairment of both the automatic and the complex tasks. And it results in impairment even at doses that would be insignificant where they have either drug alone. That's a little bit confusing. But combining cannabis with alcohol, which is not uncommon at all, results in the detrimental effects of both automatic and complex driving functions. Actual physical control of the vehicle is a vague phrase, but it's something that we see. And I wanted to make sure I mentioned this. It's when they pull over to sleep it off and they're still in the car, but they're not driving it, but the keys are still nearby. They don't even have to be in the ignition. They could be on the dashboard or in the seat, but they're still in the car and the keys are nearby. They're considered to be in actual physical control because they could at any point drive away. And that can result in a DUI conviction. And we see that. We've had a few participants come through with convictions of DUI for that. So now I'm going to move on and talk. So that's what I have for DUI. I'm going to talk about the program overall. The goal of the program, number one, above all, is to protect the public. That's our goal. We do that. We return the healthcare professionals to safe clinical practice through intervention and rehabilitation. The Participant Review Committee, Pharmacist Review Committee, PRC, meets monthly It's attended by Board of Pharmacy and Maximus representatives. It just met yesterday. Formally reviews and accepts applicants into the program. So this is it doesn't meet with the participants in person, it reviews the cases. Formulates the participants' ongoing recovery plan, reviews and approves requests to change the recovery plan, and approves them when they're ready for completion of the program. When they're ready to, they're removed from work initially when they come into the program. So when they're ready to return to work, they must apply. And when they're ready to return to work, they have to show that they are ready by showing compliance with the program requirements, having all negative drug test results, recommendation of their peer support group, self-report. They write an essay for us showing that they show that they're ready and that they've kind of examined what brought them into the program, what risks there are in the workplace, and self-report of their progress so far, and a relapse prevention plan. So what kind of triggers were there in the workplace before they came in, and what might there be what would they be facing when they're getting ready to go back to work? So we have them think about those things before they go in advance, so they're prepared before they go back to work. Once approved by the committee, they are approved by the committee to return to practice, and the committee has to approve their position and their work site. And they must identify a worksite monitor in the workplace of someone who is available to them and can provide supervision. The amount of supervision can change over time, so it usually starts at a more frequent face-to-face contact and then is reduced over time. They can't serve as a pharmacist in charge, and the PRC determines the percent of direct supervision. They have to give us a release of information so that we can contact the worksite monitor and the employer and have an agreement signed by the worksite monitor that they understand all of their responsibilities and agree to all of the responsibilities of the position. We provide training to the worksite monitors, telling them what they're looking for in the case of a relapse, how to contact the program, what impairment looks like, what the expectations are of the participant, how the program works, what their job duties need to be, and what their restrictions are. We want to look at an org chart and make sure that the participant and the worksite monitor fit within the expectations. We look at a job description and make sure there's compliance for restrictions, and that the worksite monitor and the participant sign the affidavit saying that they've been trained and they agree to the expectations. And so over all of that, and driving a lot of what we do, are the uniform standards. In the legislative year 2008-2009, Senator Ridley Thomas introduced a bill, Senate Bill 1441. And that was the bill that required the formation of the Substance Abuse Coordination Committee. And that was a committee of executive officers of the health professional licensing boards. And the bill required the committee to formulate by January 1st, 2010, uniform and specific standards in specified areas that each healing arts board would be required to use in dealing with substance abusing licensees. So that changed the structure of probation and diversion programs for the healing arts licensing boards, or at least provided structure for the boards, and created 16 uniform standards. The standards fell in the bullet points there on the right-hand side of the slide. There were 16 of them, but they fell in these categories: about clinical assessment and diagnostic evaluation, removal from practice and return to work and how we monitor, drug testing for the participants, how we manage and structure support groups, requirements for treatment, how we manage positive tests and participant noncompliance, how we handle program statistics and what's required of the vendor to report back, and auditing the program. I put drug testing in red because that's been kind of the largest of the uniform standards and the one that we came back and looked at again in 2019. So that's the one I'm going to talk about here. The uniform standard number 4 was related to drug testing and required frequencies of 52 to 104 times a year in year 1 and 36 to 104 times a year in year 2 and every year after. Unless there were issues and then you could revert back to year 1, but in general, that's the frequency of testing. So that is, in year 1, testing is weekly. Additional testing requirements that are spelled out in these uniform standards are the drug testing can be any day of the week. It can be increased at any point by the board. What was added in 2019 is that if the individual travels out of the country, the board can approve a temporary change in the testing frequency. And when they return from their travel, they can be tested by hair and blood, which has a longer window of detection so that we can go back and do kind of a retrospective look to capture anything that might have occurred during the travel. Testing is always random. They're required to make daily contact. They have to test on the day they're notified. So if they call in today, they have to test today, and all collection specimens must be observed. We require them to check in between 5 a.m. and 8 p.m. and test on that same day so that we limit the ability to, so that if they're notified after 5 a.m. and before 8 p.m. and they must test that same day so that there's not too much opportunity to flush their system or try to go the next day to test. There's some control over being able to test when selected. There are some exceptions to the testing rules. If they're not employed in healthcare, we can reduce the testing frequency down to 12 times a year. If they're tolling, if they're out of state, we can suspend it until they return, but they have to go back to level 1 when they return. If they're not diagnosed with a substance use disorder, so if they're a mental health participant or they're in the program for another reason, they can be at 24 times a year. And if they're have a previous testing or previous sobriety, they can have an altered schedule, and the board can work with them on that. We use lab-based testing, but I wanted to talk for a minute about lab-based versus rapid testing. Rapid testing would be dipstick testing, the cup testing that you might have seen, the stuff you can buy at the grocery store or drugstore, the stuff they use in drug treatment centers, those dipstick testing. We don't use that kind of testing in our program. We use lab-based testing, and I wanted to talk about why we do that. It's two-step testing. They do an initial screening of all samples, and it's sensitive, but not as specific. And most specimens that go through that initial screening are negative, and then there are some that are presumptive positive. And the presumptive positive move on to confirmation. The confirmation is the second step, and those are more specific. It's a more expensive level of testing. And they are truly negative results get screened out, and positive results, this is the gold standard, and they are tested for metabolites. And this is why you might hear or will hear people protest the results saying, well, I looked it up and I found that you get false negatives because You know, if you're taking one medication, it can give you a false negative for another drug. For example, Wellbutrin can give you a false negative for methamphetamine. Well, if you Google that, that's what it says. But that's when you're doing the dipstick testing, not when you're doing the level of testing that we do with the laboratory testing. The laboratory testing that we do is very, very specific, high-level testing. It tests for the metabolites, and it goes beyond that level of testing that might misidentify one drug for another. So we're not as likely to get false positives. We have cutoffs, the quantitative levels that are very low, some of the most sensitive cutoffs in the industry. And we also have the ability to test for limit of detection, which doesn't give a specific quantitative level, but can tell us if the drug is present. So when we have a question of whether a drug was detected, we can also do a limit of detection. When, for example, the drug is very dilute or we're concerned about the presence of a substance, we can run a limit of detection without getting the actual cutoff level. But we do generally run with some very low cutoff levels. And what are the concerns about the testing? Well, we're always worried about the efficacy of the technology, the integrity of the process. We want to make sure that those are all watched and monitored. The specimen collector training, so we work with our lab vendor to make sure that their collectors are federally trained, that they know how to use the devices, that there's quality control at the lab, that they do the confirmatory testing appropriately, that we have an MRO who's competent and well-trained. The participant integrity is always a concern. There are ways to cheat a drug test. There always will be. Whether it's buying off the observer or providing a substitute urine, or, you know, there are many ways to cheat a drug test, and you can look it up. You can Google it. You can see there are lots of ways to do it. Whether there's a lab error or a mix-up, delays in shipping or processing, the FedEx truck gets into an accident and doesn't make it to the lab. We get lost in transit. And environmental interference, the excessive heat this summer, excessive cold, storms, hurricanes, tornadoes, different things interfere with the transport. So we're always concerned about any of those interference with the lab, but we do everything we can to mitigate all of those concerns, or at least be aware of them. And if we're, when we're aware of those kinds of things, or weather interference or those sorts of things, we try to work with the lab to work around that. And what we do with the result is more important than the result itself. And it's important to remember, a single drug test does not make a diagnosis, and it's always part of the whole picture. So we're always aware of their behaviors. We're talking to the support group facilitator. We're talking to their worksite monitor. We're aware that it's not just the drug test that's giving us a result, and each drug test stands by itself. A second result doesn't invalidate the first result. So if we have a positive result and the second result is negative, it doesn't mean the first result wasn't valid. It just means there was a change. Alternate specimen result doesn't invalidate a urine result. So if we had a positive urine, but the hair test was negative, it may just mean that a hair test often looks more at frequent or more of a pattern of abuse, where a urine might detect a single incident. And we need to be able to look at all of that and consider all of that. A split specimen can invalidate the original. So when we have our participants provide a specimen, they give us a urine specimen into a single cup, and that single cup is poured into bottle A and bottle B. So that single specimen goes into 2 separate cups. So it's the same specimen in 2 cups. A belongs to the program, B belongs to the participant, but it's the same urine and it gets sent in 2 different directions. If there's ever a question from A that got tested, we can go back and test bottle B if the participant requests it. And that provides a backup. If bottle A and bottle B are ever 2 different colors, and that happens more often than you would think, we won't accept it because it means that they weren't the same specimen poured into 2 bottles because they don't match. And it's not acceptable, it's invalid. So, you know, we again, we look at all of those things and that would be a concern that they didn't provide one single pour for both. And we always have a plan for what we're going to do with the result. And the limits of the testing laboratories. A negative result doesn't guarantee the absence of alcohol or drug. It just means it was below the cutoff. You know, so we are glad to see a negative and we accept a negative, but it never guarantees anything. A positive alcohol or drug levels do not indicate impairment because we don't know where we are on that curve. Even though we're getting levels, we don't know if the substance was ingested immediately before the test or days before the test. And so we don't know where we are on that curve when the test was taken. Positive alcohol or drug levels do not differentiate acceptable use from abuse, even if elevated. So even when we're looking at prescribed medications, we're not able to differentiate use from abuse. And there's no dose result relationship because there's no way to tell if the result level is rising or falling because we don't know where we are on the curve. And the window of detection for different specimens, this is just for your reference. Hair and nails is weeks to maybe almost a year. We do test for hair and nails. If someone shows up and they're fully shaved, we can test their nails. If they've clipped their nails, we ask them not to cut their nails for a week and a half. We can come back and trim their nails and test their nails. Blood is, we use PEth testing, which is phosphatidylethanol, which is a biomarker of alcohol, ethyl alcohol, and can be tested for up to about 3 or 4 weeks, shows alcohol use. Saliva, urine, we use ETG, ethyl glucuronide, which tests for, it's also a biomarker of urine, which can test for urine for up to about 3 to 4 days and shows up in the urine. We don't currently use sweat. We do validity testing, which is determines if the specimen is valid. I'm going to move on to the next one and talk. It's been mandated by the federal guidelines since 2004. I'm going to talk a little bit about that on the next screen. So we use creatinine, not creatine. A lot of people try to take creatine supplements thinking that they're going to give us high creatinine levels, but it's not the same thing, so it doesn't matter. We measure specific gravity and creatinine. Creatinine has to be greater than 20 and specific gravity needs to be greater than 1.003. We also look at the pH. We screen for oxidants and immunoassay interference. I don't know if you want me to go through all the details, but I'll just tell you that we look at whether the urine is dilute, which means that they've had a lot of water to drink or a lot of fluid to drink, and the creatinine and the specific gravity are both very low. So normal specific gravity is 1.0 in water. Normal specific gravity in human urine is 1.003. And so anything below 1.0010 is considered dilute, or 1.002 is considered dilute. If it's below that, it can be substituted. And if the creatinine is below 2, it's not consistent with human urine and is considered substituted. They need to parallel each other. So if the creatinine goes up, the specific gravity should be going up. And if the creatinine is going down, the specific gravity should be going down because the urine would be less concentrated. But we find sometimes they go in opposite directions. And in that case, it's not valid. It's probably substituted. So we're not accepting that. We'll do an observed collection or ask for a second collection. Studies have shown that 7 to 12% increase in positive results when the creatinine or the specific gravity are mathematically normalized. Normalized being creatinine at 100 and specific gravity at 1.003. And it's just a basic algebraic equation. So we know how to do that. We know how to normalize it. And when we normalize it, we see those drug levels come up, and it's pretty amazing. But we'll see an increase in positive results when we bring those concentration levels up. And just to know that the negative specimens are discarded after 5 to 7 days. So if we're ever not sure, we need to move quickly to make sure that we're testing anything that they're holding, because they discard them after 5 to 7 days. We do look, flipping back one more time, we do look at average creatinine. So when our participants have a creatinine average over time, they may run below 100, and that individual person's average tends to run low. We can look at that too, and we'll work with them on that. So that if they're dipping below 20 occasionally, but their average runs in the 40s, that's different from someone who jumps from 200 to 20 and back to 200 again. So we're looking at those kinds of things. I probably am putting you guys all to sleep. I'm sorry. I'll move on. Hair testing. We do hair testing for drugs of abuse. The advantages is that hair testing has a longer window of detection. It's 3 months or more. It's easy to collect. It's non-invasive. It has a capability of a second collection. It's harder to beat a hair test. We do get people showing up fully shaved. They can take hair from any part of the body. Different parts of the body have different rates of growth. And so we know that, and they just need to mark that on the collection envelope, and the lab is aware then of where the hair came from. The disadvantages, it may not detect a single or infrequent use. There might be environmental contamination. So we do get people who have positive results that have been around hair in the substance in the environment. And there are controversial issues about color bias, and that's not yet resolved. And it's still a relatively new science, so we're still working on that. But we use a hair. Sorry, flipping around. My apologies. We do use a hair test when they come into the program. We do a hair and a path test once a year while they're in the program, and just prior to closure from the program, to make sure that we're getting a broader picture of substance use. So I'm moving on from drug testing, and I'm moving into early release. Early release from the Pharmacist Recovery Program due to completion of probation, and it's our opinion that that's a risky thing, and we want to make sure that you're aware that in our experience, participants tend to let their guard down and think they're in the clear. So they've been released from probation, and now they request to be released from the Pharmacist Recovery Program. Alternatively, rather than program closure, consider 1 year of transition in the PRP, which allows a lower level of monitoring and more self-management. I'm going to talk about transition and what that means. So in the transition year in our program, it's their last year in the program. They have to demonstrate a manner of living that supports ongoing recovery. They have proof of negative random drug tests and negative hair and alcohol tests prior to program completion. The transition period is 1 year, as I mentioned. They're placed on reduced monitoring. The objective is to allow the participants to take full responsibility for their own recovery process, and they must petition to transition as they enter that phase, which means that they write an autobiography, an essay examining their life's journey into recovery. They develop a relapse prevention plan and obtain letters of reference from significant others in their lives, their sponsor, their family members, and their support group facilitator. They really examine everything that brought them to this point. They must maintain a worksite monitor and have reduced, but they can begin to reduce the frequency of contact with the worksite monitor. They have to continue to submit monthly self-reports and check in with their case manager every month, but they're not required to attend 12-step meetings, health support group, and they're not required to request travel. They just have to inform us when they're traveling and make sure they have test locations so that they continue testing. And they can be at a reduced level of testing. So we begin to back off on program requirements, but not completely. So there's still a level of monitoring, but not a complete withdrawal of monitoring. Something to consider because that early release is risky for them. They have no other evidence of relapse within 24 months of their completion date, and they have to have completed at least 24 months of satisfactory program completion and program compliance. And that's it. Recovery works. And now I'm ready for questions.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Ms. Matthews. I really appreciate your time and your presentation. So insightful. So I'm just going to open up for our members to just raise hand and ask questions for Ms. Matthews. Please go ahead. Go ahead, Jesse.
Thank you, Ms. Matthews, for the presentation. It was really informative. I learned a lot. I just wanted to point out a few things that kind of stood out to me. I was aware of kombucha and other fermented drinks that may have either trace amounts of alcohol or more alcohol than people know. I didn't realize that fermented foods like sauerkraut and kimchi could potentially have alcohol, so that was really interesting to learn. I also was interested to learn about DUIs for actual physical control and sleeping it off. I understand the perspective. It's a little disappointing if someone doesn't have any other means to get home and their only option is to sleep in their car. It's disappointing to know that they could potentially still have a DUI even if they haven't actually driven, but I understand where that perspective comes from at the same time. And I was also interested to learn about the controversy with hair testing and specifically color bias. Is it that the like lighter or darker hair follicles may show a negative or positive result? Can you provide more perspective on that?
Yes, that's what the controversy is, but I don't know enough about it to really answer that for you. I would have to ask someone from the lab to be able to answer that for you. Do you want me to see if I can get that to answer back to you?
Yeah, if you're able to, that would be great.
Sure.
I'm just more curious than everything, but thank you so much for this presentation. It was really informative, and
You're welcome.
it kind of helps us understand better, the benefits of this program for licensees in California. So thank you so much.
I feel that I really tried to talk quickly, and I apologize if I talk too fast to zip through the program because it was a lot. I see that Anne also was able to join us, so I certainly invite her to jump in if she has any comments or any response to the question as well. But I will see what I can do to come back and provide Ms. Sodergren with the answer regarding the hair testing.
Thank you. Jason, you have a question or comment?
Thank you, Sung. Hi, Ms. Matthews. Thank you for the presentation. Can you please walk us through a little bit of like what is the intake for someone that has, they've gotten in trouble, now they have been they're on probation, and now that they have to go through a Maximus program. What is that intake like for individuals? And then also, if you could please speak to the check-ins, like how does that exactly work in real life, in real time?
Okay, so I'll tell you about the intake, and then I'm going to let Ann talk about the check-in because she does those routinely. So the intake process, once we confirm the eligibility, we want to make sure that the participant meets the eligibility requirements to be in the program. So once we confirm their eligibility, we schedule them for an intake with our case manager. And so we use the ASAM, American Society of Addiction Medicine criteria, and we have an intake form that we use that has been approved by the boards, and worked with our boards on all the questions, and all of the pieces of it includes some mental health issues as well as substance use questions. We go through that. It takes about an hour and a half to 2 hours. We do that by phone, sometimes by Zoom. Most of the time it's just a telephonic interview. And then once we've done that and we have a basic understanding, all of our case managers right now are registered nurses, and Ann is a registered nurse with experience working in substance use. So we've done that interview and we get a basic assessment of where the individual is and what's bringing them into the program. We've reviewed any documents that we have, whether they've been referred to us by any probation or disciplinary documents. We'll review those and kind of get a sense of where they are. And then we'll get them to register with lab testing right away and set them up for an intake assessment so that we get face-to-face either, well, since the pandemic, it's been on Zoom, but pre-pandemic and maybe sometime in the future, it'll be back to being a face-to-face assessment in the community. But they do a clinical assessment with a licensed clinician who's a marriage and family therapist or a psychologist or a social worker. So they'll get an additional clinical assessment with the clinician to look at their diagnosis, their fitness for duty, and their substance use disorder, and whether or not they're appropriate for our program and whether or not they need treatment. In most cases, we'll also send them on for a more intensive assessment, which would be a 3-day assessment with a program that provides programs for healthcare professionals. They're specialized in treating professionals with like ours. And there are a few programs around that do that. So we'll ask them to go do a more intensive assessment with those programs, so that they're looking more at the unique issues that affect our kinds of participants. And so we've started enrolling them in drug testing. We've started them enrolling them in their health support group. It's a peer support group where they attend usually twice a week to start, and then get those assessments going. So we've got all of that initial process where we're getting we're assessing them from several different sides to see what the picture really is, and reading the documentation that we have coming in.
Okay,
So,
thank you. Yeah.
what's really going on. So I'm going to turn it over to Ann. She can talk about their check-in, because we have them when they start the program, they check in weekly with us, with the case manager, until we review them at the committee. So Ann, if you want to come off of mute and you can take over about the check-ins.
So basically what I do, I check in with the participant weekly when we first start, and then it becomes a monthly check-in. I ask them specifics about their program and how they're doing. I also touch bases with them if they're taking any medications. I review those medications and any medication adjustments that they may have had over the last month. I also look at their treatment provider reports. If they're mandated to enter treatment, as well as any clinical assessments that we have. I also specifically talk to them about how they're doing in their program, if they found a sponsor, what type of meetings they attend, as well as I touch bases with them regarding their finances. If they're struggling, trying to connect and sign up for disability, I give them specifics information that they can talk to their treatment providers about so that they can at least get that started for themselves. One of the things that I do like to touch bases with them about is how they're doing on a day-to-day basis. And as Ginny had mentioned, during the transition phase, that's kind of a more critical time for them because now they're kind of flying on their own. And specifically, I ask them what they're doing for self-care, because a lot of times I'm finding that the pharmacists, especially, they tend to want to do more, work more. They kind of take themselves out of their family situations and start just going hard at it. And I try to teach them a balance between working and self-care and program. And that's what I do. And I love managing the Board of Pharmacy cases. So been doing it for 15 years.
Thank you for that.
You're welcome.
Thank you. Any other member comments? Okay, so thank you. Really appreciate the presentation. As a public agency, Ms. Matthews, the board provides opportunities for public comment on each agenda item. We will now be accepting public comment on the agenda item. Public comment is not a question and answer time, but you're welcome to respond to any comments about the program in general, but you're not required to do so. Members, if you would like Ms. Matthews to respond to any public comments, you can request such a response. Moderator, please open the line for public comment.
Thank you, Mr. Board President. I've opened up the Q&A panel. If any member of the public would like to comment, please type comment using the field in the lower right-hand corner of your screen and submit it to all panelists, or you may simply raise your hand. We are displaying instructions and we'll give you a moment. All right, I see we have Chi Wen with a raised hand. And just a reminder, comments are limited to 3 minutes. I'll give a 10-second warning. And Chi, you should be able to unmute yourself.
Thank you so much for a wonderful presentation on Maximus. My quick question is on, you mentioned that the providers that is in the helping the people in the treatment, you oversee that. So how do the participants look for the providers? Are they from their own PCP, their own, or do you have a specific clinics that you send them to? Thank you.
I can respond to that. There are many factors related to that because it depends on whether or not they have insurance and they have a provider list. We do have some preferred providers that we know have given good care with our participants, but we certainly don't limit to those. There are over 3,000 treatment providers in the state, so we don't want to limit to any one or two specific providers. So it just depends on what the participants can afford, what their insurance will cover, what their individual needs are, whether they need a specific type of treatment, their diagnosis. There are many factors that affect where they go for care.
All right, this is the moderator. I see no further requests for comment. Shall I close the Q&A panel?
Yes, please. Thank you, Tricia. Thank you, Ms. Matthews, and I really appreciate you coming here to provide a presentation. Okay, so it's 10:26. Yes, thank you. It is 10:26. We've been going at it for a while, so we'll take a quick bow break, probably about 10 minutes. So we'll come back at 10:40, and we will resume with our next agenda item 14. We'll take a quick roll call to make sure everyone's back. It's 10:40. So we'll start with Maria. Are you back? We'll come back to you, Maria.
I'm here.
Indira.
Maria's here.
Oh, hi, Maria. Maria.
Public member
Hi,
present,
Maria.
Indira. Oh, sorry.
Hi, Indira. Jesse.
Hi, I'm back.
Hi, Jesse. Jose.
Live and in the
Are you
flesh.
there?
I'm here.
Thank you, Jose. Kula, are you here? I saw you, but I think she might have dropped off. So I think she's gone. Ricardo, are you back? Might not be back yet. Nicole?
I'm here.
Hi, Nicole. Jason?
I'm here.
Thank you, Jason. And I'm here. So we have 7. So for the interest of time, we'll get started. But Ricardo, please just let us know when you're back. Okay, moving on to the agenda. Item 14, discussion, consideration, and possible approval of recommended changes to proposed regulations to amend Title 16 CCR Section 1793.5 related to pharmacy technician application, Section CCR 1793.6 related to pharmacy technician training programs, and Section 1793.65 related to the pharmacy technician certification program. Next, for our consideration is recommended changes to the board's pharmacy technician regulation proposal to address concerns identified during the post-adoption review. As indicated in the meeting materials, this regulation package has been quite a journey, being initially approved by the board in 2016. I trust you had an opportunity to review the meeting materials, which includes the history of the rulemaking package. As included in the meeting materials as part of the post-adoption review, a conflict was identified with recently enacted changes to the state's education code. Provided in the meeting materials is a recommended language that could be used to remedy this conflict. The proposed changes to the language is reflected in double underline and double strike through and is also displayed on the meeting slide. The meeting materials detail out possible options for the board. While I understand the time frame is tight, I recommend that the board consider moving forward with option 1, which would be to accept the staff recommended modified language to Section 1793.6C2, 1793.6C2, and notice the modified text for a 15-day comment period. Members, I'd appreciate your thoughts on the issue and would also obtain a motion if you believe such action is appropriate. I note that a possible motion is included in the meeting materials and displayed on the meeting slide. Members? Oh, Kula also raised her hand. I think she's in the attendee. Trisha, if you could promote her.
Thank you.
Hi, Song. This is Jason. I'm happy to make the motion as presented on the slide.
Thank you, Jason. Anyone second Jason's motion?
This is Nicole. I'll second.
Thank you, Jason and Nicole. Nicole seconds. Jason motions. Any member comment? Okay, we'll go to public comment. Trisha?
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Board President. I'm opening up the Q&A panel. If any member of the public would like to make a comment, please type comment using the field in the lower right-hand corner of your screen and send it to all panelists, or you may simply raise your hand. We are displaying instructions and we'll give you a moment. All right, I see no requests for comment at this time. Shall I close the Q&A panel?
Yes, please. Thank you so much, Trisha. With the motion and second and public comment, we'll take a roll call vote. Maria, how do you vote?
Yes.
Thank you. Maria votes yes. Indira, how do you vote?
Yes.
Thank you, Indira. Jesse, how do you vote?
Yes.
Thank you. Jose, how do you vote?
Yes.
Thank you. Kula, how do you vote?
I'm gonna abstain just because I missed the discussion.
Oh, okay. Thank you, Kula. Ricardo, are you back? All right, Nicole, how do you vote?
Yes.
Thank you. Jason, how do you vote?
Yes.
Thank you. And I vote yes, the motion passes. Okay, so moving on to the next agenda item is 15, Legislation and Regulation Committee update. I will turn the meeting over to Jessie Crowley, Chairperson for the Legislation and Regulation Committee, to provide a report on behalf of the committee. Jessie, floor is yours.
Thank you, President O. I am happy to report on the committee's meeting last week. I would like to thank my fellow committee members, Vice Chair Jose de la Paz, Sung O, Maria Serpa, and Nicole Thibault for your time and discussion last week. During our meeting last week, our committee considered several measures. As I noted during our meeting last week, legislation is very dynamic. There have been changes to some measures since the board's and committee's discussions in April. In general, I do not plan to extensively read the information contained in the meeting materials, but will highlight some of the committee discussion and recommendations, if any. Before we discuss the items included on the agenda, I want to note that there are other measures previously considered by the board that are not moving this year. We cannot discuss these measures, but wanted to ensure that members were aware of updates and why they are not included on the list of pending legislation impacting the board for consideration today. Assembly Bill 2055, which would have transitioned the Cures operations to the board. Assembly Bill 2265, which would have required opioids to be dispensed in lockable vials. Assembly Bill 2948, which would have required the board to advise a complainant of the outcome of an investigation within 60 days of closure. Senate Bill 958, which was the Medication and Patient Safety Act of 2022 related to brown bagging and white bagging. Senate Bill 1031, which would have reduced the renewal fee for an inactive license, and Senate Bill 1379, which was the board's remote processing proposal. Moving on to the measures still pending that will impact the board or the practice of pharmacy if enacted. Assembly Bill 852, Healthcare Practitioners' Electronic Prescriptions. Members, AB 852 has not previously been considered by the board as it initially related to nurse practitioners. As amended, this measure would make changes to e-prescribing requirements, including some board-sponsored provisions related to requirements to transfer controlled substance prescriptions. The measure would require the board to maintain a list of healthcare practitioners that are exempt from the requirements. As I understand the comments from the meeting materials, it appears staff believe this could be facilitated through an online registry, which would not involve significant resources. As indicated on the slide, the committee is recommending establishment of a support position on the measure. As part of the public comments received during the meeting, commenters suggested that a period of transition would be necessary to make necessary computer changes. I would like to note that as I understand the measure, some provisions include a one-year implementation timeframe to accommodate such changes. Members, do you have any comments or questions? Thank you. With no comments from members, the committee recommendations serving as a motion, moderator, please open the lines for public comment.
Thank you. I'm opening up the Q&A panel. If any member of the public would like to comment, please type comment using the field in the lower right-hand corner of your screen and submit it to all panelists, or you may simply raise your hand. If you've called into the meeting, you can press *3. We'll give you a moment. All right, I see no requests for comment. Shall I close the Q&A panel?
Yes, please. Thank
Okay.
you. President O, I turn it over to you to take the roll call vote.
Thank you, Chair Crowley. We'll start with Maria. How do you vote?
Yes.
Thank you, Maria. Indira, how do you vote?
Yes.
Thank you. Jessie, how do you vote?
Yes.
Thank you. Jose, how do you vote?
Yes.
Kula, how do you vote?
Yes.
Ricardo, are you back?
Yeah, I'm back and I vote yes.
Okay, thank you, Ricardo. Nicole, how do you vote?
Yes.
Thank you. Jason, how do you vote?
Song, on this item and subsequent legislative
yes,
items, I
yes.
will abstain. Thank you.
Thank you, Jason. And I vote yes, the motion passes. Back to you, Chair Crawley.
Thank you. Assembly Bill 1328, Clinical Laboratory Technology and Pharmacist. This measure would amend several provisions of the Business and Professions Code to expand authority for pharmacists to perform CLIA waive tests either approved or authorized by the FDA upon patient request or hospital authorization, provided that there is a valid and respective CLIA waiver certificate and laboratory license with some exceptions. Further, this measure would amend pharmacy law to declare that pharmacy practice is a patient and public health-oriented health service that is continually evolving to include more sophisticated and comprehensive patient care and public health activities. There have been no changes to this measure, and it appears there are no updates available on its status. The board previously established a support position. I respect the board's current support position. As a committee, we are not recommending a change in the board's current position. Members, do you have any questions or comments? Seeing none, moderator, we are ready for public comment from individuals participating via Webex.
Thank you. I've opened up the Q&A panel. If any member of the public would like to comment, please type comment using the field in the lower right-hand corner of your screen and send it to all panelists, or simply raise your hand. We'll give you a moment. All right, I see no requests for comment. Shall I close the Q&A panel?
Yes, please. Thank you.
Okay, you're welcome.
Moving on, Assembly Bill 1662, Licensing Boards, Disqualification from Licensure, Criminal Conviction. Members, AB 1662 would allow a prospective applicant to request a pre-application determination based on information provided by the prospective applicant regarding their criminal conviction. It would also require the board to determine if the prospective applicant could be disqualified from licensure based upon the information submitted with the request. The measure was amended April 27. The amendments establish authority for the board to assess a fee of not more than $50 to perform the workload required. Further, as part of its determination, the board is required to provide a summary of criteria used by the board, the process for an applicant to request a copy of their conviction history, notification of the right to appeal the board's decision. The board initially sought a support if amended position, as the policy goal of the measure appears to be in line with the board's policy in this area. Board staff has indicated that the board will need to promulgate regulations should this measure be enacted. The measure is scheduled to be heard in Senate Appropriations on August 1st. As a committee, we agreed that the board's current position is still appropriate. Members, do you have any comments on AB 1662? Hearing none, moderator, we are ready for public comment from individuals participating via Webex.
Thank you. I've opened up the Q&A panel. If any member of the public would like to comment, please type comment using the field in the lower right-hand corner of the screen and send it to all panelists, or simply raise your hand. We'll give you a moment. All right, I see no requests for comment. Shall I close the Q&A panel?
Yes, please. Thank you.
Okay, you're welcome.
AB 1733 would expand authority for the board to convene meetings held entirely by teleconference under specified conditions, which are detailed in the report. Regrettably, the hearing on this measure was postponed by the committee. During its prior consideration of the measure, the board established a support if amended position. The data provided in the meeting materials demonstrates that remote meetings expand access to participation in meetings, including by individuals who may not otherwise be available to participate because of health, costs, or other barriers. This transition back to in-person meetings demonstrates that members of the public largely prefer to continue to participate via Webex. As indicated in the meeting materials, we are able to resume full teleconference meetings for an additional year because of temporary changes to the government code. As these changes are temporary, the committee determined that the board's current position on the measure remain appropriate. As I mentioned during the committee meeting, I suggest that the board consider having a discussion at a later meeting on how to return to awarding CE credits to individuals participating remotely in the board and committee meetings. Also during the meeting, we discussed how meetings convened via teleconference provide equity, allowing everyone to participate in public meetings. Public comments received during the meeting indicate support for remote meetings, but that members should be required to participate from a single location. Members, do you have any questions or comments? Okay. Hearing none, moderator, we are ready for public comment from individuals participating via Webex.
Thank you. I've opened up the Q&A panel. Any member of the public that wishes to comment may type comment using the field in the lower right-hand corner of the screen and submit it to all panelists, or simply raise their hand. We'll give you a moment. All right, I see no requests for comment. Shall I close the Q&A panel?
Yes, please.
Okay.
Thank you. Assembly Bill 2194, Pharmacists and Technicians, Continuing Education, Cultural Competency. Members, AB 2194 would require that at least one of the 30 hours of required continuing education, or CEs, for pharmacists include participation in a cultural competency course as defined. The bill would also prohibit the board from renewing a pharmacist or pharmacy technician license unless the applicant submits proof to the board of completion of at least 1 hour of participation in a cultural competency course. The intent of the bill is to help ensure that pharmacies, through the pharmacists and pharmacy technicians, are providing culturally competent care to members of the LGBTQ+ community. This bill is co-sponsored by the California Pharmacists Association, or CPHA, and Equality California. At the April meeting, the board established a support if amended position requesting a delayed implementation to allow licensees time to complete the required coursework, and also to confirm that an audit-based approach for compliance would be consistent with the provisions. It is my understanding that the author's office has confirmed that an audit-based approach for compliance is appropriate and will be amending the measure to delay implementation. As I shared during the meeting, I support this measure as I think it is an important first step in opening doors for education in this area, but I wish it were a bit more inclusive of other marginalized communities. I'd like to point out that with such a diverse population, California pharmacists may differ in the cultural competency training that would best help them serve their specific patients. For example, pharmacists with multiple deaf or hard of hearing patients would potentially benefit from a CE on serving patients with disabilities, health literacy, or utilization of ASL interpreters in pharmacies. Other marginalized communities that need better care include, but are not limited to, undocumented residents, patients who speak English as a second language, patients with poor literacy, and residents with poor social determinants of health. This measure highlights an important issue for us. As a committee, we determined that the board's current position is appropriate as the amendments are not yet in print. As part of our discussion, the committee agreed that it appears appropriate to schedule discussion on how the board can promote education on other marginalized communities and perhaps development of a policy statement in that area. Members, do you have any questions or comments? Hearing none, moderator, we are ready for public comment from individuals participating via Webex.
Thank you. I've opened up the Q&A panel. If any member of the public wishes to comment, please type comment using the field in the lower right-hand corner of the screen, or simply raise your hand. We'll give you a moment. All right, I see no requests for comment. Shall I close the Q&A panel?
Yes, please.
Okay.
Thank you. Senate Bill 731, Criminal Records Belief. Members, this measure was recently amended. As amended, the measure would expand automatic relief to include arrest for felonies punishable by state prison. Further, the measure would expand automatic conviction relief to certain felonies under specified conditions. As part of our discussion, we noted that serious and violent felonies and felonies requiring sex registration are excluded. The board previously established an oppose unless amended position. As I shared during the committee meeting, I appreciate that the intention of the bill may be seeking to remedy some injustices and racial disparities, specifically in regards to a disproportionate number of arrests among Black and Latino Californians. I struggle with the implementation approach, however, as it is taking away from discretion for us to make a decision consistent with the board's mandate. I think there may be some felony drug offenses, for example, that the board should be able to consider as part of its licensing decision. As an example, there is a spectrum of drug-related offenses, and I believe the board should have full discretion to make a decision on the appropriate outcome for an individual with previous felonies, which may differ for an individual, for example, with marijuana convictions versus an individual that manufactured methamphetamine who is now seeking licensure. As a committee, we determined that the board's current position is still appropriate. Members, do you have any questions or comments? Great, hearing none. Moderator, we are ready for public comment from individuals participating via Webex.
Thank you. I've opened up the Q&A panel. Any member of the public who wishes to comment may type comment using the field in the lower right-hand corner of the screen and send it to all panelists, or simply raise their hand. We'll give you a moment. All right, I see no requests for comment. Shall I close the Q&A panel?
Yes, please. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Senate Bill 872, Pharmacies Mobile Unit. Members, Senate Bill 872 was amended on June 15th. The policy goal remains the same, providing for the use of mobile units to bring pharmacy services to Californians that may not otherwise have access. The approach offered is now different. Rather than requiring licensure, the approach is now to allow for the use of mobile units as an extension of the pharmacy. The provisions continue to be limited to city or counties to operate a mobile unit and to provide medications within its jurisdiction to individuals without a fixed address, individuals living in county-owned or city and county-owned housing facilities, and individuals enrolled in Medi-Cal plans operated by the local jurisdiction or health department. During our meeting, the committee concluded that the board's previous issues surrounding the operational requirements are addressed as all relevant provisions of pharmacy law would be required. Members noted that there may be utility for the use of mobile units beyond those established in the measure. We noted that should the measure be enacted, it may be helpful for the board to issue some FAQs or other educational materials detailing out how some of the provisions of pharmacy law are applicable to the use of the mobile unit. As displayed on the slide, the committee is recommending a change to a support position. Members, do you have any questions or comments? Thank you. With the committee recommendation serving as a motion, moderator, please open the lines for public comment.
Thank you. I've opened up the Q&A panel. If any member of the public would like to comment, please type comment using the field in the lower right-hand corner of your screen, or simply raise your hand. We'll give you a moment. All right, I see no requests for comment. Shall I close the Q&A panel?
Yes, please.
Okay.
Thank you. President O, I turn it over to you to take the roll call vote.
Thank you, Chair Crowley. We'll start with Dr. Maria Serpa.
Yes.
Thank you, India Cameron.
Yes.
Thank you, Jesse Crowley.
Yes.
Thank you, Jose de la Paz.
Yes.
Thank you, Kula Koenig.
Yes.
Thank you, Kula. Ricardo Sanchez.
Yes.
Thank you, Ricardo. Nicole Tebow.
Yes.
Thank you, Jason Wise.
Abstain.
I know you will abstain. Thank you, Jason. And I vote yes, the motion passes. Back to you, Chair Crawley.
Thank you. Senate Bill 988. Members, Senate Bill 988 was also amended since the board's last discussion. As was discussed during the committee meeting last week, last year, Senate Bill 311 established provisions for a terminally ill patient within a hospital to access their medical cannabis. Late amendments to the measure created conflicts with several provisions of state and federal law. The amendments appear consistent with the language of the letter published in the Senate Journal, wherein the author's office conveyed the intentions of the measure. Although the approach now offered in the measure is different from the prior version, the measure still remedies the conflicts created in last year's legislation. As a committee, we determined that the board's current position remains appropriate. Members, I would appreciate any comments. Hearing none, moderator, we are ready for public comment from individuals participating via Webex.
Thank you. I've opened up the Q&A panel. If any member of the public would like to comment, please type comment using the field in the lower right-hand corner of your screen or simply raise your hand. We'll give you a moment. All right, I see no requests for comment. Shall I close the Q&A panel?
Yes, please.
Okay.
Thank you. Senate Bill 1237. Senate Bill 1237 would expand the provisions for a fee waiver for a member of the military called to active duty, and the term active duty would have the same meaning as active duty as defined in federal law. The measure will be considered by the Assembly Appropriations Committee on August 3rd. The board established a support position in April. As a committee, we determined that the board's current support position is appropriate. Members, do you have any questions or comments? Thank you. Hearing none, moderator, we are ready for public comment from individuals participating via Webex.
Thank you. I've opened up the Q&A panel. Any member of the public who wishes to comment may type comment using the field in the lower right-hand corner of your screen or simply raise your hand. We'll give you a moment. All right, I see no request for comment. Shall I close the Q&A panel?
Yes, please. Thank you.
Okay.
Members, Senate Bill 1259 was not previously considered by the board as it originally related to retail installment contracts. However, as amended, this measure would expand authority for pharmacists and allow pharmacists to furnish any opioid antagonist approved by the FDA under specified conditions. If enacted, the board will need to promulgate regulations in coordination with other specified agencies, including the Medical Board, California Society of Addiction Medicine, and the California Pharmacists Association. Given the board's long history of supporting access to life-saving medications, including naloxone, the committee is recommending establishment of a support position. As I open up this item for member comments, I want to note that expanding access points for patients is extremely important. From a practical standpoint, I think we also need to realize that the costs of these medications may be beyond what an individual could pay. Regrettably, the affordability issue is a barrier beyond the board's purview, but I believe important to acknowledge. Members, do you have any comments or questions? Thank you. With the committee recommendation serving as the motion, moderator, please open the lines for public comment.
Thank you. I've opened up the Q&A panel. If any member of the public wishes to comment, please type comment using the field in the lower right-hand corner of your screen or simply raise your hand. We'll give you a moment. All right, I see no requests for comment. Shall I close the Q&A panel?
Yes, please.
Okay.
Thank you. President O, I turn it over to you to take the roll call vote.
Thank you, Chair Crawley. We'll start with Maria Serpa.
Yes.
Thank you, Maria. Indira Cameron Banks.
Yes.
Thank you. Jesse Crawley.
Yes.
Thank you. Jose de la Paz.
Yes.
Thank you. Kula Koenig.
Yes.
Thank you. Ricardo Sanchez.
Yes.
Thank you. Nicole Tebow.
Yes.
Thank you. Jason Wise. Jason will
Abstain.
abstain. Thank you. And I vote yes. The motion passes. Back to you.
Thank you. Senate Bill 1346 would expand provisions for redistribution of unused donated medication. The measure has been amended since our last discussion, after which the board established an oppose unless amended position. Amendments expand the entities authorized to donate medications to redistribution programs. The amendments also limit expansion of specified provisions for redistribution programs to specified counties and place a sunset date on the county programs. The board will be required to submit a legislative report. As I stated during the meeting last week, I share all the patient safety concerns previously raised by the board, as well as the broad civil and criminal immunity provisions. During our meeting, the committee determined that the board's current oppose unless amended position is still appropriate. Should the measure pass, I suggest that staff, as part of its evaluation and assessment of these programs, pay special attention to IV and infused medication if they are allowed to be redistributed under a county program. I would suggest that if the measure passes, that the board receive annual updates on the program and any issues that arise. Members, do you have any questions or comments? Thank you. Hearing none, moderator, we are ready for public comment for individuals participating via Webex.
Thank you. I've opened up the Q&A panel. Any member of the public that wishes to comment may type comment using the field in the lower right-hand corner of your screen and submit it to all panelists, or simply raise your hand. We'll give you a moment. All right, I see no requests for comment. Shall I close the Q&A panel?
Yes, please.
Okay.
Yeah. Moving on to the regulations portion of the report. Members, the remaining items are for information only. As detailed in the meeting materials and associated attachments, the board has a number of regulations in various stages of promulgation. As the information is detailed in the meeting materials, I do not intend to review each of them, as the information is contained in the public materials. I noted that the board's, since the release of the meeting materials, the board's inventory reconciliation regulation has been approved. The information on the board's website has been updated to reflect this approval. With this approval, the board has one regulation undergoing final review by the Office of Administrative Law related to temporary closures. The board has 3 undergoing final review by the DCA, or Business Consumer Services and Housing Education. The board has 4 regulations undergoing pre-notice review by the DCA. Members, do you have any questions or comments on any of the regulations included? Hearing none, moderator, we are ready for public comment from individuals participating via Webex on the regulations portion of the report.
Thank you. I've opened up the Q&A panel. Any member of the public that wishes to comment may type comment using the field in the lower right-hand corner of your screen, or simply raise your hand. We'll give you a moment. All right, I see no requests for comment. Shall I close the Q&A panel?
Yes, please. Thank you.
You're welcome.
President O, this concludes the update from our committee.
Thank you so much, Chair Crowley, and thank you to all the members for all your hard work, as always. With that, we're going to go to agenda item 16, Executive Officer Report. I will now ask Ann to provide a brief report on board's operation. Thank you, Ann. Floor is yours.
Good morning, members. Thank you very much for the opportunity. I will keep my comments very short today, but there's additional information provided in the meeting materials. Specific to the board's response to COVID-19 and actions taken by other agencies, there's a lot of information included in the meeting materials. The board still does have 4 broad waivers that are available for licensees to use, and we are continuing to assess on a case-by-case basis those site-specific waivers. The most recent action that I'd like to highlight is actually a waiver that was issued by the DCBA director, and it is related to pharmacist authority to independently provide Paxlovid. So that there's a link in the meeting materials to the waiver itself that includes the conditions for use. With respect to business modernization activities, as background, business modernization is the process that the board or any state government agency must use to evaluate its current computer system programs to determine what, if any, changes are appropriate to its technology systems. It's a multi-year process. The board has recently completed its review and approval of all of its business process maps related to its licensing and cashiering functions, and anticipates that the process maps will be completed for enforcement later this year. This is a critical first step, as the business process mappings will then help to define some of the critical functions that any new potential computer system must meet. Also included in the meeting materials is an update on the Cures program for the last year. Included is also information specific to Cures related to the provisions of 528, as well as the regulations that was discussed during the last board meeting related to expanded function and use of Cures, including the delegation provisions. In addition, the Medical Board of California is undertaking a review of its prescribing guidelines. We wanted to make sure that members were aware of this effort underway by the Medical Board. The Medical Board did host an interested parties meeting. We did have staff that attended and observed the meeting as well. We will continue to monitor for this, and if there are changes that are finalized and released to Medical Board licensees, the board will also ensure that our licensees are aware of it, as it could potentially impact the practice of pharmacy as well. There's also information included about the licensure data collection project that is underway by the Department of Healthcare Access and Information. That information is intended to receive information from licensees and gain a better understanding of what we have in terms of workforce. Should the board be interested, we'd be happy to invite them to provide a presentation at a future meeting where you can learn more about the efforts. And lastly, the NEVP annual meeting was convened earlier this year. President O served as a representative from the Board of Pharmacy, California Board of Pharmacy. The resolutions that were approved are detailed in the meeting report, and I will turn it back to you, President O. Thank you.
Thank you, Anne, for a very quick but wonderful report. Members, please feel free to ask Anne if you have any questions or concerns. Just go ahead and raise your hand or unmute. Okay, hearing none, we'll open up for public comment. Moderator.
Thank you, Mr. Board President. I've opened up the Q&A panel. If any member of the public wishes to comment, please type comment using the field in the lower right-hand corner of your screen and send it to all panelists, or simply raise your hand. We'll give you a moment. All right, I see no requests for comment. Shall I close the Q&A panel?
Yes, please. Thank you so much, Tricia. Thank you. Okay, so now we're ready to go on to our petition hearing, agenda item 16, petitions for reinstatement of licensure, early termination, or modification of penalty. As included on the agenda, we'll be considering 2 petitions today, and so it is 11:19, so I think we can get started. And we'll see, depending on that timing, we may take a lunch break between each petition. We'll see how it goes. So starting, I will turn the meeting over to our ALJ, Erin Coach Goodman. Is that correct, Judge? I think I mispronounced your name last time, so I apologize.
It's okay.
Judge Erin Coach Goodman to preside over the hearing.
Okay, thank you. It's Koch Goodman, but that's okay.
Koch Goodman. Okay, thank you.
Pretend there's a T in there. Good morning, all. Let me start by making sure that I have Ms. Jarvis appearing first, and there she is. Okay, very good. And then, shall we start, Dr. O, should we start with either of these petitioners in particular, or as they are on the agenda?
Yeah, so usually we like to just do by the what is agendized. So I believe Dr. Nguyen is the first one on the agenda, as far as I know. So
that's
okay,
correct.
Yeah,
that's what I have as well.
That's usually the order we should go. Yeah.
Okay, very good. And Dr. Nguyen, are you available?
Yes, I am.
Okay, very good. I see you there, and we can see and hear you, Ms. Jarvis. Can you see and hear Ms. Nguyen as well?
I can, thank you.
Okay, very good. So both of these petitioners have agreed to digital recording of the hearing. And so I will assume, actually I may be asking this of Tricia or Debbie, but I just want to ensure that we are starting a recording, or that we have already started the recording for these petition hearings.
The recording is still going, Your Honor.
Perfect, very good. In that case, I'm going to begin this morning by introducing myself. My name is Erin Koch-Goodman, and I am the administrative law judge that's been assigned to conduct the two petitions that we have before the Board of Pharmacy today. We have our first petition is Chi Nguyen, and for spelling for the record, it's C-H-I, last name N-G-U-Y-E-N. I do want to make sure at this time that we have a quorum. Dr. O, would you like me to walk through the members, or would you like to walk through the members?
Oh, I can just call the roll.
All right,
really quick.
If you could do that for me, thank you.
Absolutely. Dr. Maria Serpa.
Present, thank you.
Thank you. Indira Cameron Banks. Indira, I see you. Just for the record, could you just say here?
Here, here, sorry, it was stuck.
Okay,
yes.
Thank you.
Present, sorry.
You're muted there. All right, Jessie Crowley.
I'm present.
Thank you. Jose de la Paz.
Here, Mr. President.
Thank you. Kula Koenig.
Here.
Thank you, Kula. Ricardo Sanchez.
Here.
Thank you, Ricardo. Nicole Tebow.
Here.
Thank you. Jason Wise.
Here.
Thank you. And I'm here. Back to you, Your Honor.
Okay, very good. Thank you so much. Before we get started, why don't I do appearances for the record on behalf of the state of California, please?
Yes, good morning. I am Deputy Attorney General Christina Jarvis. I am appearing here on behalf of the Attorney General for the people of the state of California. My role is not adversarial, but it is intended to protect the public interest. Thank you.
Very good. Thank you so much. And Dr. Nguyen, I did confirm that you were with us. I have all of the petition documentation that you've submitted, as does the board, and they've reviewed that documentation. So for the most part today, we're going to focus on the rehabilitation, or the reasons why your probation should be terminated early. Because there will be questions for you, maybe from Ms. Jarvis, myself, or the board members, I'm going to go ahead and swear you in now. If you could raise your right hand for me, please. Do you solemnly swear or affirm that the testimony you're about to give is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth under penalty of perjury?
Yes.
Okay, very good. Thank you. You can put your hand down. What we will do is we will start with Ms. Jarvis. She will give us a procedural history of the case in summary and an opening statement. And then Dr. Nguyen, I'll turn to you, and it will be your opportunity to share information with the board. And then if there are questions by Ms. Jarvis or by the board members, that will be the time we will ask those questions. And then I will give you each an opportunity, you and Ms. Jarvis, to make closing statements in this case. Do you have any questions before we get started?
No, no questions at all.
Thank you for
yeah, thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. Ms. Jarvis, I'll turn the floor to you, please. Actually, before I let you do that, let me just note for the record that this is the Board of Pharmacy case number 6877, and it is the Office of Administrative Hearings case number 2022-070-591. And it is July 28th, 2022, and it is currently 11:25 a.m. Ms. Jarvis, the floor is now yours.
Thank you, Your Honor. This matter arose via an accusation against Petitioner's pharmacy and pharmacist license. Petitioner was the sole owner and the pharmacist in charge of the pharmacy, Kim Pharmacy Number 3. Additionally, Petitioner was the only pharmacist working at that pharmacy. Petitioner entered into a stipulated settlement with the board, which became effective on February 11th, 2021, placing Petitioner on probation for 2 years. Additionally, by separate stipulation, her pharmacy was publicly reproved and ordered to be jointly and severally liable for the costs of investigation and enforcement. It has been more than 1 year since Petitioner was placed on probation, and therefore Petitioner is eligible to petition for this early termination of probation. There were 4 causes for discipline based on an inspection conducted on or about July 31st, 2019. The first cause for discipline was moral turpitude, dishonesty, fraud, or corruption, in that Petitioner filled and billed approximately 300 prescriptions and obtained payment from insurance companies for these prescriptions that were never picked up by the patients. All 300 of these prescriptions observed by inspectors were more than 14 days old, and some were as much as 10 months old. Many of these prescriptions were also the same prescription for the same patient, meaning that the patient would have several months' worth of this prescription waiting in will call. The second cause for discipline was failing to maintain accurate inventory records, in that an audit of approximately 14 drugs showed variances indicating 857 more drug units were sold by Petitioner than she had purchased. This indicates potential reuse of sold drugs. Additionally, there were 8,804 fewer drug units than could be accounted for by Petitioner's inventory, indicating theft or improper disposal. The third cause for discipline was failing to comply with prescription label requirements for dispensing tablets from 2 different manufacturers. So what happened here was that Petitioner took the same drug from 2 different manufacturers, so they looked different. One tablet was yellow and one was white, and put them in the same bottle to make enough drug units for that entire prescription. Additionally, Petitioner filled a prescription with a generic when the brand name was entered on the prescription label and billed to the insurance. And then finally, the fourth cause for discipline was failing to maintain operational standards and security by failing to have a sink with hot and cold running water as required by the California Code of Regulations, Section 1714. One of Petitioner's sinks in the pharmacy was covered with a board, and only brown colored water would come out of the faucet. The other was in the bathroom, and only cold water and not hot water would come out of the faucet. If I may pause here, my screen shows that Dr. O has dropped off a video. Have we lost him?
Hi, Christina, I'm here. It's just a connection, so it may look like I'm disappeared, but I'm here.
I just wanted to make sure we didn't lose you, Dr. O. All right.
Thank you.
With her petition, Petitioner provided the following documents. First, she provided lengthy descriptions of how she has worked to resolve the issues identified in the accusation and how the PBMs are choking the life out of small independent pharmacies like hers. She states that being on probation only makes her cash flow issues more difficult. Petitioner wants the board to know that during the time of the inspection, she was very distracted due to her father's severe illness and hospitalization. Again, she is the only pharmacist working at this pharmacy, and therefore many issues just piled up on her due to this distraction. Additionally, Petitioner believes that due to being on probation, her application to become an advanced practice pharmacist was denied. Petitioner also provided 4 letters of recommendation, all of which were verified. One from Petitioner's pharmacy consultant, who states that she has made monthly observations and has seen Petitioner demonstrate competency and compliance, and has been proactive with self-improvement in a professional realm. Another from NRPH, who states that petitioner is highly professional. She is a caring pharmacist who is a respected preceptor of pharmacy students at 4 different schools of pharmacy in Northern California. Additionally, petitioner has significant support both to and from her local community, meaning that petitioner supports her local community in many ways, and her local community also supports her. The third is from a patient who says the petitioner is professional and diligent, never makes errors, treats customers like family, and is vital to the community she serves. And the fourth is from Susan Webster, the executive director of the Pacific Pharmacy Alumni Association, who states that she has visited petitioner at her pharmacy numerous times over the past 10 years and has witnessed petitioner's compassion, expertise in geriatrics, and passion for serving her community. Petitioner provided photos of her pharmacy, including the will call area, which included signs that were posted for both patients and staff, indicating that prescriptions would no longer be held, the sink, which previously gave only brown water. Additionally, even prior to being placed on probation, and I know this partly because I was the attorney who handled the underlying case here, petitioner did provide proof of receipts of having a plumber out to repair both sinks. I think that was actually not even just prior to being placed on probation, but prior to the accusation even being filed. Once it was called to her attention that this was a violation, petitioner did get those sinks fixed. Petitioner also provided 6 pages of Pbm Remittances and Fees, and she provided a copy of her CV. She provided CE certificates for 106 hours from January 1st of 2021 through May 1st of 2022, and a letter confirming that petitioner has paid the cost of investigation and enforcement in the underlying matter in full. At this time, petitioner has been 100% compliant with her probation terms. So Exhibit 1 is the petition packet, which consists of the documents that I've just identified as being included with the petition, and includes also the notice of hearing, the agreement for electronic recording, and a memorandum to the board. At this time, I would move that the petition packet in full, along with those documents, be admitted into evidence.
Very well. Dr. Nguyen, do you have any objection for the petition packet, which I will mark as Exhibit 1, being moved into evidence and considered by the board in making their decision?
Oh, no, please. Please review the information.
All right, very good.
No objection.
Okay, very good. I will admit Exhibit 1. Ms. Jarvis?
Thank you, Your Honor. And then at this time, Exhibit 2 is the underlying decision and order in this matter, including the stipulated settlement. And I would ask that that also be admitted into evidence.
All right, Dr. Nguyen, any objection to Exhibit 2?
No objection, Your Honor.
All right, Exhibit 2 is in evidence.
Thank you, Your Honor. Then at this time, I will cede the floor to the petitioner.
All right, Dr. Nguyen, we now turn to you. As I indicated earlier, the board has a copy of all of these materials and has reviewed them. So if you could expand perhaps upon the rehabilitation that you've done, that would be helpful in this case. And then I will open the floor to questions for you, okay?
Thank you.
All right, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Your Honor, and Deputy Attorney General, for the opportunity for me to speak to you and your team today. I want to thank you, Dr. O, members and staff of the Board of Pharmacy, for allowing me the time to request early termination from my 2-year probation. My name is Chi Nguyen. I would never do anything intentionally to dishonor my oath as a pharmacist, harm patients, or place myself on probation. Currently, I am working as an independent pharmacist. I am the PIC and own a small 500 square feet pharmacy, providing pharmaceutical services to many refugees, serving the poorest of the poor in the South Sacramento area, an area where I grew up. My oldest patient is 105 years old, and many of my patients have known me since I was 18 years old. My pharmacy is located in an area containing a large, unsheltered homeless population and high crime rate, burglaries, and shoplifting. Hence, for the safety of my staff, neighbors, and patients, I do not carry OTC and Schedule II medications, even though these two types of medications provide a high profit margin. To assist the homeless, I work with the Homeless Operation Team, a police task force, connecting homeless individuals with social workers, community health care, and shelters. This is only a brief description of me. I hope that you will see my strong determination to help those in need and grasp my dedication, professionalism, and work ethics. I hope that you will conclude that I will never do anything to intentionally jeopardize my pharmacy license, harm the public, and ruin my credibility and trustworthy nature that I have nurtured over a span of 20 years or more. I accept full responsibility on all the allegations presented. I am truly sorry and do not offer any excuses. With a total focus on rehabilitation, I hope to prove to the board and public members that I am worthy, caring, and deserving to continue to serve my patients as a pharmacist without any restrictions. One of the most difficult periods of my life was when the inspectors came to visit my pharmacy. I was extremely stressed from shouldering many burdens on my own. My father had recently been rehospitalized for a heart problem. At the same time as my father's declining health, I was also experiencing financial difficulties. The two assigned Board of Pharmacy analyst and inspector to my case, Victor and James, helped me tremendously. My two pharmacy consultants, Jacqueline and Terry, also offered valuable guidance. From the first conversation on February 10th, 2021, with James, Victor, and their supervisor, without any hesitation, I followed their advice and moved forward immediately with my rehabilitation of remedial classes, probation, and pharmacy consultation payments, and steps to overcome my vulnerabilities. Within 2 months, April 2021, I registered and completed the approved 2-day course of PBI's 22 units class, California Pharmacy Ethics and Professionalism, with 6 and 12-month follow-ups. I also registered and completed on my own a few months later, in July 2021, an additional 12-week course of PBI's 12 units class, Maintenance and Accountability, with weekly 1-hour seminar. By early April of each year, in addition to the required continuation CE units, I registered and completed the required additional law education, a total of 21 units in the following courses approved for my case: updates in chronic pain management, 2021 new pharmacy laws update, how the government wants pharmacists to decline controlled substance for prescriptions, building pharmacist skills in opioid analgesic therapy, pain management for special populations, prevention and management opioid use disorder, understanding mental health in pain management, the Board of Pharmacy Law webinar, prevention, fraud, waste, and abuse in the pharmacy, ethics and law in pharmacy practice, keeping up with supply and demand pharmacy inventory management, federal pharmacy law update, and make the right decision, pharmacy ethics. Presently, I have satisfied and completed all the required remedial classes and CEs stipulated by the Board of Pharmacy. Regarding fees, in April, actually earlier in February of 2022, I completed all the required penalty and monitoring payments to the Board of Pharmacy. Probation penalty of $7,500 and monitoring fee of about $200. As of April of this year, 2022, I paid the required pharmacy consultations. In the first year of probation, pharmacy consultations were mandatory as monthly meetings. Starting April of 2022, the Board of Pharmacy approved my request for reduction to quarterly pharmacy consultations, which I greatly appreciate. The pharmacy consultation cost is currently at $3,900. With CEs completed and penalty payment checks mailed, I continue to take steps to prevent me from repeating my mistakes, from ever crossing the line to be on probation again. Regarding the 4 clear and concise citations, I set guidelines and procedures for staff to follow immediately. I posted educational signs for staff and patients. I met with staff weekly, then monthly to assess policy and procedures, rules and regulations, and also to notify them update of any new laws and guidelines. I review the Board of Pharmacy website weekly, the script quarterly, and refer to the pharmacy self-assessment regularly. During the probation period, I contacted my mentors numerous times for help and guidance. I continue to provide a transparent and trustful bond with my professional pharmacy associates. I reach out to the university deans, regional coordinators, and board and association presidents and explain to them regarding my probation. Through emails, direct telephone calls, and texts, I explained and provided the straightforward citations on my license. From my mentors, I gained many helpful insights on how to overcome my difficulties. Knowing that my mentors are eager to help me, I do not feel isolated, suffering alone from my vulnerabilities. I now know not to shoulder all my professional and personal responsibilities, but to reach out for help. Hence, I reach out to family members to aid me in caring for my father. I no longer shoulder all the responsibilities and care for my father alone. We all pitch in and coordinate our time together to help my father improve his health and well-being. I have made all of the changes required by the terms of my probation. I have renewed my commitment to the practice of pharmacy and all of the regulations and rules that apply. I am ready to move forward and put this behind me. I want to focus on my pharmacy without probation always on my mind. Ending probation means a lot to me for my emotional and spiritual well-being. Your Honor, Deputy Attorney General, and important Board of Pharmacy members, I am here before you to ask you for an early termination of my 2-year probation. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Ms. Jarvis, do you have any questions for Dr. Nguyen?
Yes, Your Honor, thank you. Dr. Nguyen, just to focus on today, and can you confirm right now that you currently have both hot and cold running water in your sinks in your pharmacy?
Yes, I do. I'm at work, so that's why I can show you the sink with the camera. And it's clean.
Okay, your testimony is sufficient. Thank you.
Thank you.
And then can you explain why you had approximately 300 prescriptions over 14 days old in your will call at the time of the inspection?
Yes. It's my own stupidity, putting patients first. I deal with a geriatric population that rely heavily on their children and on their grandchildren, which I've called numerous times and logged in books when I called. And they assured me, they promised me, Chi, Auntie Chi, I will be there next week. I will be there right away. I'm finishing finals. From the inspection, I know now that I need to follow the laws as a PIC. So I no longer allow that. I post signage on the walls. I explain to the patients, their caregiver, their children, their grandchildren that I would love to help you and hold on to your meds, but I need to return this to stock and I will redo them very easily for you when you have the time to come in.
Now, I recall from the underlying matter in this case that you also serve a population that travels back essentially to their home countries. They may be immigrants or here on work visas, things like that, and that was also an issue. Can you explain that?
Sure. Many of my patients are refugees, just like myself, and they often go back to China or to Vietnam, India, Fiji, to visit their family members. And when that happens, they would ask me, please have those meds ready so that my children will come by and pick them up and mail them out for me. And it's my fault, Deputy Attorney. I called, I logged, and it's to the point where I cannot do that anymore, where I completely say, I can give you the month, and when your children calls me to request the refill for them to mail to you, then I will do it then. But I will no longer allow that. I will have them ready and your children come by and pick them up. It was just too much for me to handle and too long for them to come by. And once again, I apologize for that fraud that occurred at that time. From my C classes, from speaking with my mentors, that is no longer the case.
And then I see from the accusation that the fraud, as you just termed it, was approximately $8,000 from the insurance companies. Were you required to pay that back?
What I did is right away, right after the inspection, I went ahead and just took all that off, returned as much as I can. And then what I did is I called the patient and I said, I'm bringing these over for you. These are your stuff. And then I also called the insurance to let them know. So a lot of them I was able to return to the insurance. And none of the medications was control drugs. They were mainly just maintenance meds because I do not carry Schedule 2 here.
Okay, thank you. I have no further questions, Your Honor.
Thank you.
Thank you. Dr. O, I can, or you can, but I'll begin with you. Do you have any questions for Dr. Nguyen?
Hi, Your Honor. I will go last, so you can have all my members go first. I'd like to
very good.
give others opportunity first.
All right, absolutely. All right, then, Dr. Serpa, any questions?
Yes, thank you. A few questions for Dr. Nguyen. Thank you for your very good and complete testimony. One question is a paperwork thing that is on your petition. You had marked questions number 14 and 15 that you are not under probation. Was that just a mistake? I think often that's a mistake that we do see petitioners have, because you should have marked those yes.
I have to look at the paperwork, but I have acknowledged that I'm on probation. I can look at that paperwork and resend it in again for you. I'm not sure how I can miss that.
I don't think that's a requirement, but Deputy Attorney Jarvis and the judge could respond to that. I just wanted the record to show that those should be marked yes, and you are under probation. That's correct?
Yeah, I have. I apologize. I checked it thoroughly. I'm not sure how I could have missed that because
it's a common mistake, so don't take it personally. Okay. Okay. And my last question is, I'm very curious about your background. You stated that you are at your workplace or at your pharmacy. So that is your pharmacy, then that's the medications that are stored behind you?
Yes, this is my location. This is my pharmacy.
Is there, so the rest of it is also part of the pharmacy, or is that just a part of, is that just the?
This is the inside of the pharmacy on one of my computer that I usually do my prescriptions. And that's the shelves that I have for some of the meds.
So I just was curious because it looks like you have a crib there. Do you have children in the pharmacy too? Or what is that on the far right? It could be just the way the picture looks. Is that so there's no children that are running around the pharmacy?
Both my children are now in college.
Okay.
No, that's a printer. Is that a printer? It's gray. It's a printer.
Well, thank you. That was just a curiosity. When you said that your pharmacy was 500 square feet, that's amazing that you're able to provide those wonderful services in such a small environment. That's all my questions. Thank you.
Thank you. And I apologize again for not checking the probation on 14 and 15. I'll look at that again afterwards.
Dr. Nguyen, I'm trying to take a look at it as well. In the meantime, focus on answering the questions for the board members, and then I can ask you about those for clarification in just a moment. Ms. Cameron Banks, do you have any questions?
No, thank you.
All right. Dr. Crowley, any questions?
Hi, thank you so much for the thorough petition. I really appreciated that you really notated every deficiency and addressed how you've made changes. I did have a couple of questions. So I noticed in your petition you said that you now perform an evaluation of your will call about 2 to 3 times a week. Can you describe that process a little further? Do you have a list of medications that have been in there past a certain period of time, or do you just manually go through the will call?
Every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday, I would just look at all the prescriptions. Now it's so easy, Dr. Crowley, because there's just very few there left. And I just check the dates. And if it's actually more than 9 days is when I start my return to stock. I don't wait to the 14th day. My pharmacy consultant is a Kaiser pharmacist, and their guideline is 9 days. So I followed the stricter guideline, which made it a lot easier for me. So, and I log in my logbook, RTS, which date and stuff like that, and made it really so easy. And I just RTS it and call the patient, say, hey, when you're here again, I'll just redo it for you.
Perfect, thank you. And then,
thank you.
So as I understood it, you were the only pharmacist working at your store. Are you still the only pharmacist there?
When my father was hospitalized, then I would I'm so thankful that I have friends I can rely on that would come and help me open, a few hours here and a few hours there. But since this happened, I just work on my own. I don't ask any friends to help anymore. I rely on my community of members to help me with my father's health now. So it makes it really easy for me to be here in person all the time. And everything is now back to how it was always before.
Great. So I noticed on the petition, you had been applying for other pharmacy positions just for financial reasons. Can you just kind of describe the hours you work in your pharmacy and any additional hours you would be looking elsewhere?
Yes. Right now, I open Monday to Friday, 9 a.m. to 5 p.m. with 1 hour lunch. And during the weekends, I'm closed. So I look for jobs for the weekend. And that's what I'm trying to do, is look for a job for the weekend. And once if I'm able to sell the pharmacy, then I will look for extending my hours more to work full time at other locations and settings and hospitals.
Perfect. Well, thank you very much. Good luck.
Thank you so much.
All right, very good. Thank you, Dr. Crowley. Mr. De La Paz, any questions?
Just a question. You mentioned that some of the issues you experienced initially were due to the stress of your father's health. How's he doing now?
Thank you so much for asking. Um, he's better. He is his quality of life is much better. His recent heart episode was about 7 months ago, and there was a new procedure that they did for his heart, so that helped greatly. Thank you for the nice question.
No problem. And the second one was your the financial health. What have you done, or what is the current status of your financial health? If you could share with us.
It is a dire situation. I'm just happy I'm able to pay for my drugs and pay for my staff wages. I am surviving week by week, and I call my cardinal to make sure how much I've ordered regularly, so they know I'm in a financial streak.
Okay. All right. Thank you. There's no further questions for me.
Thank you.
All right, Ms. Koenig, any questions?
Yeah, question and a comment. Question is for clarification regarding there was the prescription that was coded as generic, but it was a brand. Can you let me share like what happened there?
Thinking back, I'm not sure, but how I was able to solve the whole situation is, number one, I asked my staff to check NDCs on everything. It has to match perfectly on all prescriptions, NDCs in return to stock, NDC when filling prescriptions, NDC when typing prescriptions, so that we will not make that same mistake again.
Dr. Nguyen, I believe it was related to Voltaren, but I could be incorrect.
You are correct. It is the Voltaren. And I believe it just came out generic, if I remember at that time. But I don't want to give any excuses, because as PIC, I should have caught that. And the easiest way is just to post NDC, check NDC, check NDC. And that's what we do now, is everything that we do, even when we type, when we edit, when we fill, when we check again, it's all make sure NDC is correctly used. And that would just prevent any of the issues from happening.
Great. And just some comments. So I'm actually a Sacramento native, and so I'm aware of the Meadowview, Southland Park area, and definitely understand Meadowview in terms of the demographics. And it's also one of those areas that has a high propensity of African-American child death, also high immigrant population. So I just want to appreciate that your struggle in serving that population that I'm very familiar with, and also just being able to, as an independent pharmacist, trying to stay afloat and do that work, and also like trying to balance this compassion for your clients who have, different needs, while trying to make sure that you are abiding by pharmacy law. And also just appreciate you making no excuses and taking full responsibility. So I just wanted to share those insights, and good luck to you.
Thank you so much for the nice comment.
All right, Mr. Sanchez, any questions?
Both of my questions have been answered, actually. It was whether you had fixed the sink, and also how did you fix the problem with the generic medication and the name brand, but you've answered them. So.
All right, thank you. Dr. Thiebaud?
Yes, hi. Thank you, Dr. Nguyen, for being here today. Really appreciate your candor and your taking responsibility. My question, Dr. Crowley already kind of hit on it, but I just want to confirm. So when you did not return drugs to stock at 14 days, you were doing that because you believed it was in the best interest of your patients and their care. Is my understanding correct?
Yes, for my own as I mentioned, I should have put the laws above, but I know their struggles. I know how they rely on my patients, especially the geriatric, rely on their children and grandchildren. I serve a 5-generation population, and the language barrier. And you know, I grew up in this community. So I extended that courtesy, and it was my wrongdoing. And I no longer take that step. And I explained to my patient, I explained to the aunts, the uncles, and they understand. They appreciate my truthfulness and my care. So we no longer allow that to happen. Within 9 days, we RTS and we call the patients, don't worry, we'll get it for you. Just come when you have time and I will have it ready for you very easily.
Great. Thank you. I'm glad you were able to make that transition and still serve the patients in the same way. Thank you so much. No further questions.
All right. And Mr. White, any questions?
Just a comment, Your Honor. Hi, Dr. Nguyen.
Hello.
I just want to say a heartfelt thank you for serving this underserved population. You made some mistakes. You've owned up to it. You have done the hard work necessary in order to remedy that. And thank you for your time.
Thank you.
All right. In that case, we turn back to you, Dr. O. Any questions?
Hi, Dr. Nguyen. Thank you. I really agree with all our board member comments, and thank you for coming. Very impressed with your presentation. Just a few questions. First, about the your pharmacy operation. From reading the petition, I'm getting the sense that you are really leaning toward not keeping the pharmacy open. Can you just tell us, like, where you are in that? Are you hoping to somehow still keep it? And how busy is your pharmacy currently? Do you have someone there? Because I know you've been on the meeting for a while, so I'm not sure if someone is helping you today, because you are, you know, I'm at the pharmacy. I hardly have any time to get on a meeting for longer than like 15 minutes. So I just want to make sure if someone's there helping you today.
First of all, regarding whether I want to sell the pharmacy, no, I don't. But due to financial situation, the dilemma is I don't see the light at the end of the tunnel to keep the pharmacy. I am looking for buyers. I have a rep to help me with that. It's not a want, but I think now is a need. I don't want to sell, but I think I need to sell. Regarding the pharmacy right now, I have posted signs stating that I will close certain hours due to a very important meeting, and to please come back after lunch at 2. I do have a staff handling the phone calls for me right now.
Okay, thank you. And how busy is your pharmacy currently? I know you submitted your...
The third question I forgot was I have about 100 prescriptions a day, and there's no OTC section. There's no Schedule 2 prescriptions because the area is just not safe.
And would you say that about 100 prescriptions a day, you have about one full-time person with you?
No, I'm the full-time, and then my tech is part-time, and that's all.
Okay. I'm just really hoping that you'll be able to keep the pharmacy open. So, but you know, regardless, do you think that this probation have anything to do with you keeping the pharmacy open or not?
Oh, regarding the probation, it has nothing to do with whether I want to close or not want to close. It is harder because, for example, I do home visits for my hepatitis patients. And because they're Asian, they'll take herb medicine more than their regular meds. So I want to make sure they feel safe to continue to take herbs. I like to know what they're taking so I can find out whether it's going to interact with their hepatitis meds. And I do a lot of home visits. But because I'm on probation, financially, that means I have to hire another pharmacist to visit the homes with me because I cannot do that on my own. I can be the pick at my own location, but once I leave the pharmacy, then I need to have another pharmacist to see my work, which is understandable. That is totally understandable. But you ask about financially, so the probation limit in that case where I have to hire another pharmacist to allow me to have that one program to be continued.
I'm just wondering if the probation, you might be able to get a job somewhere, and so that even though it may be difficult, that hopefully you can work. Not that I'm hoping for you to work every day, but I'm hoping maybe you can get a job, and then hopefully you will be able to keep the pharmacy open even at slightly, very deeply challenging financial situations, so you can hopefully maintain it. So that's kind of what I was thinking. But regardless, I appreciate your time. I really wish you the best, and just wish you the, good luck. And
thank you so much, Dr. O.
Yep. Sure. Back to you, Your Honor.
Okay, very good. Ms. Jarvis, any other questions?
No, thank you, Your Honor.
All right, would you like to make a closing statement at this time?
Yes, just briefly.
Okay, I'm going to have Ms. Jarvis, that's okay. I'm going to have Ms. Jarvis go first, and then Dr. Nguyen, I'll have you give the final statement in this case, okay?
Thank you.
All right, thank you. Go ahead, Ms. Jarvis.
Thank you, Your Honor. At this time, I would submit to the board the petitioner appears to be a hardworking pharmacist who made mistakes during a difficult time in her life. And at this time, I see no harm to the public by granting this petition. Thank you.
All right, very good. In that case, Dr. Nguyen, the floor is yours.
I pray that you will grant early termination of both my personal and my pharmacy probation. I base this request on my acceptance of responsibility, remorse, cooperation with Board of Pharmacy inspectors, and prompt and complete adherence to terms of probation. I am dedicated to the profession of pharmacy, and I will do whatever I can to make sure that my pharmacy is 100% in compliance with pharmacy law and regulations now and in the future. I believe that my probation inspector supports my request, and if possible, I hope that you will get feedback from him as well. Thank you.
Dr. Nguyen, thank you so much for your time, and I will take that as the petition being submitted for Dr. Nguyen. Dr. Nguyen, you're more than welcome to stay on with us, but we understand that you have perhaps other things you need to do today, and so you can drop off the call at this time.
Thank you so much. Have a wonderful day and have a great meeting.
Thank you. With that being said, Dr. O, it is 12:08 p.m. and I don't know what your schedule is like or how you'd like to proceed. So why don't you help me decide?
Yeah. Thank you, Your Honor. We will take a lunch break. We'll come back at 1, and we will continue with the next petition at 1 o'clock. So we will see everyone back here at 1 o'clock.
Okay, very good. Thank you so much.
Are you back, Your Honor?
I am.
Let us know. Oh, perfect. Okay, we'll take a quick roll call, and I'll bring it back to you. So, Maria, are you back?
Here.
Thank you, Maria. Indira?
Present.
Thank you, Jesse.
Here.
Thank you, Kula. I think Kula's coming. I think she's in the attendee. If you could just promote her, Tricia. Ricardo?
Here, Kula.
Thank you, Kula. Thank you, Ricardo. Nicole?
Here.
Thank you, Nicole. Jason?
Here.
Thank you, Jason, and I am here. So we are all here, and there may be some members joining in and out, so we'll just might announce it for the record. Okay, Your Honor, it's back to you.
All right, very good. Thank you so much. I just want to make sure that we have Mr. Boggs available.
Yeah, I just unmuted and started the video, so hopefully that's working out.
Yes, I can see you, Ms. Jarvis. Can you see him as well and hear him?
I can, Your Honor.
Okay, very good. So let's begin then, and I just want to confirm again with Tricia that the proceedings are being recorded. Is that right?
That is correct, Your Honor.
Very good. Thank you so much for that. We are here today for a petition that was filed by Mr. Colin W. Boggs. That's C-O-L-I-N, middle initial W, last name B-O-G-G-S. My name is Erin Koch-Gidman, and I'm the administrative law judge that's been assigned to conduct the hearing today on the petition. It is July 28th, 2022, and it is 1:05 p.m. This petition has been given a case number by the Board of Pharmacy of 6344 and an Office of Administrative Hearings case number 2022070643. Mr. Boggs, were you present for the other petition hearing we did this morning?
Yes, I was.
Okay, very good. In that case, you know how that will proceed. So if I could begin by swearing you in, if you'd raise your right hand, please. Do you solemnly swear or affirm that the testimony you're about to give is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth under penalty of perjury?
I do.
All right, very good. Thank you. You can put your hand down. Ms. Jarvis, I'll have you give your appearance for the record on behalf of the state of California, and then give us the procedural history in this case along with your opening statement, please.
Thank you, Your Honor. So good afternoon. I am Deputy Attorney General Christina Jarvis. I am appearing here on behalf of the Attorney General for the people of the state of California. My role is not adversarial, but it is intended to protect the public interest. This matter arose via an accusation filed September 11th, 2018 against petitioner's pharmacist license and the Walgreens pharmacy at which petitioner was the pharmacist in charge, PIC. Petitioner entered into a stipulated settlement with the board, which became effective on February 13th of 2019 and placed petitioner on probation for 5 years. It has been more than 2 years, actually more than 3 years, since petitioner was placed on probation, and so petitioner is eligible to petition for early termination. There were 4 causes for discipline in the underlying matter, all based on an inspection conducted on or about December 11th, 2015. The first cause for discipline was failing to provide accurate and adequate consultation to patients. The circumstances were that the inspector observed pharmacy technicians notifying petitioner that there was a mandatory consultation for several different patients. One patient stated that she was permitted to decline this consultation. Petitioner told a driver for one patient that if the patient had questions, the patient should just call petitioner on the telephone. Petitioner did provide a consultation to a driver who was picking up medications for a patient, but failed to consult any patient information prior to providing the information, and then actually provided incorrect information to the driver. For another driver, petitioner failed to notify the driver that the prescription had different dose and directions than the patient had previously received. The second cause for discipline was failing to obtain the hard copy of a prescription for Schedule II medications prior to dispensing the medication. Petitioner stated that the protocol was, and this was somewhat confusing in the accusation, so we may want to ask petitioner some questions about this, but the protocol was that when a patient was first admitted to hospice, the nurse would fax in an order to fill prescriptions along with a patient protocol, so 2 documents. The prescriber would then sign the protocol, and the pharmacy would use that signature for all prescriptions for that patient. However, when a nurse would then later change that order, Petitioner would not get an updated prescription, an updated signature from the prescriber, and petitioner informed the inspector that they just continued to use the same protocol and then rely on what the nurses would fax in without, as far as we can tell, any signatures whatsoever. Petitioner also would never check, nor would other pharmacists, to see if the nurse's faxed order matched anything that was on the patient's protocol. The third cause for discipline was dispensing Schedule II hospice prescriptions without obtaining prescriber verification. This is similar, but the prescriptions were faxed orders with nobody's signature, no physician's signature, all containing at least one Schedule II controlled substance. Petitioner then failed to initial these prescriptions as being received from hospice. None of the prescriptions had a copy of the signed prescriber order attached to them. None of the prescriptions, which stated that they had an exemption, a hospice exemption, under Health and Safety Code 11159.2, referenced or complied with Health and Safety Code 11167.5 as required. And in fact, when this was brought to petitioner's attention by the inspector, he stated he was completely unaware of that requirement. None of these prescriptions were dated. None of the prescriptions had any indication that there was a call to the prescribers by the pharmacy. And again, there was no verification of any of these prescriptions with the prescribers. The fourth cause for discipline was that petitioner failed to store HIPAA-protected records in a secure location, not accessible to the public or unauthorized persons. The circumstances of that were that the prescription records were stored in a warehouse to which the manager and the assistant manager of the Walgreens, not just the pharmacy, had key code access. When inspectors entered the warehouse, they discovered that a back gate was actually open to the outside. And so anybody could have accessed the warehouse at that time. Also in aggravation, petitioner had received a prior citation for failing to keep an accurate inventory of dangerous drugs. In that, petitioner was unable to account for a shortage of 11,458 tablets of Norco-10s, or for an overage of 1,616 oxycodone 30 milligrams. That citation was obviously prior to the accusation, and it was paid in full, a $2,000 fine. Now, to identify the documents with his petition, petitioner provided the following: a personal statement stating that petitioner has made many changes and vastly reduced his workload. He currently works at a different Walgreens store than the one at which he was PIC when he was disciplined, and he works there as a staff pharmacist, not as the PIC. He has administered thousands of COVID vaccines in the last year or two, and has taken a more active and invigorated approach to his search for knowledge in pharmacy and keeping himself updated on pharmacy law. Petitioner provided 4 letters of recommendation, all of which were able to be verified. One was from a friend and patient who states that petitioner is always helpful and went above and beyond when the patient's parents were each dying in assisting with their medications, with their advice, and then petitioner also helped this patient significantly with her own autoimmune disorder when she was having some drug interaction issues. Another letter from a patient states that even though the initial Walgreens location where they first met petitioner was always busy and always had a line, petitioner always took time to consult with them, and they formed a trust-filled relationship, such that when petitioner moved to the Walgreens where he is currently employed, these patients, which was a couple, a husband and wife, also began going there for their medications instead. So they switched pharmacies, although they're both still Walgreens, in order to go with petitioner to the new Walgreens. A pharmacist states that he has known petitioner for over 20 years, worked with him for 2 years some time ago, and then again at the time of writing of the letter. This author states that petitioner is far less stressed and much more attentive to pharmacy laws at his current position. Petitioner also always watches for red flags and assists with corresponding responsibility checks. In sum, petitioner has always been a compassionate, caring pharmacist, but now that he's working closer to 40 to 50 hours a week and is not the PIC, he is also more educated, educates others, and has more insight into both pharmacy and the laws that govern it. And the final letter is a pharmacist who is also the pharmacy manager and therefore one of petitioner's supervisors where petitioner currently works. She states that petitioner is professional and dedicated, loves the job, goes above and beyond for patients, has implemented new protocols based on his education efforts, essentially due to being on probation and the disciplinary action, and is an absolutely upstanding pharmacist. And in fact, other stores in the vicinity frequently call petitioner or this pharmacy with questions, knowing that this pharmacy and the petitioner will always follow the letter of the law. Petitioner also provided continuing ed certificates for 57.5 hours from June 2020 through June 2022. And then the petitioner is also 100% compliant with probation and all terms, and has paid the costs of investigation and enforcement in full. One note about the causes for discipline, I referenced 4. There were 8 in the accusation itself. 4 of those, the first 4, first cause for discipline, second cause for discipline per the headings, were only for the Walgreens. It was only terms 5, 6, 7, and 8 that were specific to petitioner today. So petitioner does address that there were 8 in his petition packet and states that 4 were essentially doubled. That is absolutely true because they were all the same violation, just 4 for the pharmacy and then 4 for the PIC, who is petitioner. So at this time, I would like to move Exhibit 1, which is the petition packet consisting of the documents identified and also including the notice of hearing, the agreement for electronic recording, and a memorandum to the board as Exhibit 1.
All right, Mr. Boggs, do you have any objection to what Ms. Jarvis has referred to as Exhibit 1 being considered by the board in making their decision in this case?
No, I do not.
All right, thank you. We will admit Exhibit 1.
Thank you, Your Honor. And then Exhibit 2 is the underlying decision and order in this matter, including the stipulated settlement. And I ask that that be admitted for all purposes as well.
All right, Mr. Boggs, any objection to Exhibit 2?
I have no objections, Your Honor.
All right, very good. Thank you. We will move Exhibit 2 into evidence.
Thank you, Your Honor. Then at this time, I will cede the floor to petitioner.
All right, very good. Mr. Boggs, we're going to give you the floor. Again, a reminder that we're looking at the rehabilitation. The board has a copy of your petition and has reviewed that. So simply summarizing the information that's there is not necessary, but focusing on the rehabilitation would be helpful.
I appreciate that. Well, let me give you a little bit of background on myself. I was registered as a pharmacist in 1981. I took over the Walgreens pharmacy in May of 1993. It was a 24-hour, 7-day-a-week, 365-day open pharmacy that over time, as I was the pharmacy manager, became very busy. Our high water mark in prescriptions were 700 a day. Normally would be between 500, 600 a day average. We started doing the hospice prescriptions back in the 90s. And at the time, my district manager, the hospice supervisor, and the board of hospice were together in a group, and they determined that this protocol system was illegal and was okay. So I'll leave that aside for now. Basically, why did I want to terminate my probation? I have 3 reasons. 1, I'd like to clear my name. I feel like that I was kind of trapped in this pharmacy, doing a ton of prescriptions. I was always there. I was working at least 50 hours a week, filling a lot of prescriptions. And I did admit that my adherence to policies and procedures slipped as I just tried to make sure the prescriptions were accurate and got the work out. The second reason is I cannot have interns in the pharmacy, and that was one thing I really liked doing, was imparting my knowledge on interns. I kind of missed that. The third thing was I would like to go with an advanced pharmacy degree just to challenge myself, but for no other reason. I will never, ever become a pharmacist in charge again, and I will never be a manager because I'm the kind of person that takes on way too much stuff, and I'm better off being a staff pharmacist. It's been better for my blood pressure, my health, and definitely my marriage. I have lost some money from all the hours not worked in the overtime, but it's been more than made up by satisfaction. So what does probation meant to me? Probation to me was like a bird being let out of the cage. After the accusations came in May, the wheels were in motion in Walgreens to move me out of that store and demote me to staff pharmacist. I went to the store across town, which was much, much slower. I'm gonna get some water because I'm kind of a nervous guy, especially in front of these people. And so I went to this other pharmacy that was at the time the slowest store in the district. So moving there and not having the kind of pressures and everything else on my back, I started to reinvigorate myself towards pharmacy. I was given quite a bit of law to learn for my probation, which I dove into, and I really got to bear down and take in a lot of law in a more reasonable fashion. And one of the most important things the board had me do was get on the ethics course that I ended up getting at PBI. I had to go down to Irvine because they canceled all the Northern California ones. And the first day was just basically a gentleman telling us how you're a target for the board and how to protect your license. I realized that I was very derelict in protecting my license. I cared too much for my community and not enough for myself. I didn't have hard conversations that I should have had with both my superiors and also the hospice and other individuals who are putting pressure on me and my job. Also, so that was day one. Day two was really good because it was an ethicist who read over our statements of why we got in trouble, what was our overall feeling about our relationship to pharmacy and life. And that really caused me a lot of inner reflection on why I wanted to be a pharmacist, what I wanted to do, and how to go forward. So that made me feel a lot better about myself and let a lot of my anger go against the situation that I found myself in. Since that time, I have had wonderful communications with my inspector, James Flores, who I'll give a total shout out, very professional, always informative and always prompt, and also to Victor Macias, my probation monitor, who's been very good at communicating me everything that's been going on. I've tried to work with them as much as I can to become a model probationer, and I believe I have. If you guys all read my sheet, I had 18 stipulations. I've met all to the letter. So even though if I stay on probation, it's not going to affect the way that's not going to affect my day-to-day activities and the way I approach my job. So that's going to stay the same. So to me, probation actually has been a blessing because I don't work holidays anymore. I used to always work either Christmas or Thanksgiving and always New Year's Day, always July 4th, and other holidays. And then because we had so much staffing issues and we were a busy pharmacy, so most pharmacists did not want to work our store if it came up for a vacancy. So sometimes I'd find myself working a double shift and so on and so forth. That it was hard to find relief, so I was generally working extra shifts. It was extra money, but it was also extra stress. So all that's gone away with this change. So my blood pressure is now well under control. My health is excellent. I exercise regularly. I feel great. I haven't missed a day of work. Well, I really haven't. I've only missed 2 days of work my whole life since I've been a pharmacist. Pretty amazing run there. But I haven't missed a day of work since I went to the new store. Really good rapport with the customers. I've met a lot of new people. A lot of people from my old store have come over. That's good and bad. It's good because it's good to see them. It's bad because our volume's up, a little more pressure. We're getting very busy now. And with the pharmacist shortage, it's hard to find relief pharmacists. In fact, we've had to cut hours now because we can't get relief at our store. But that's beside the point. I enjoy immunizing people. I don't know if anybody read about my love for knowledge. I've subscribed to many things. I listen to podcasts constantly. I'm really up to date on all the new stuff, even though I graduated 41 years ago. I always was, but to me, it's a lot more pleasurable. I don't want to look back on some of the things that were accused of me, and in the settlement, some of those things I did kind of have an issue with, but to me, that's all water under the bridge. I'm actually looking forward, and actually when I see something from the board, I'm not like, oh my gosh, it's the board. Or if I see an inspector come, it's like, oh my God, it's inspector. It's more like, hey, I'm ready for you. I know I can handle it. So to me, it's all about looking forward, and that's my whole thing. And I really don't want to look back. And because that was, although I had many good years there, I felt very dedicated to my patients who were elderly and lived nearby. The store I was at there was several different senior citizen high rises. So we had a population was very close to the pharmacy, and there was a low-income clinic that the bus stopped right at our pharmacy, so we had a lot of Medi-Cal patients, and we had done a lot of the TARs and the extra getting medications changed over the years, so they were loyal customers. So I really felt indebted to them, but unfortunately I didn't feel indebted to myself, and that's what got me on probation over the years. And so that's basically my story. I feel really good where I'm at. This probation thing has actually been a blessing in disguise because I did ask out of that job, but nobody wanted it. And so because I was always the person that people went to, the patients, the doctors, everybody else, I felt like I might as well be the manager. But my attitude has changed towards that. As also, I'm 65 years old, coming up in October. I'm only going to probably have a few more years left. So, I'm going to retire soon. So there's no reason to put myself through this stress. I'm just going to enjoy my last, 5+ years of pharmacy and just keep doing what I'm doing. And that's pretty much my statement.
All right, thank you, Mr. Boggs. Ms. Jarvis, questions?
Yes, thank you, Your Honor. So you went from being a PIC at one Walgreens to working for a different Walgreens as a staff pharmacist. Can you explain a little bit about the difference between the two Walgreens and why you couldn't just step down to being a staff pharmacist at the Walgreens where you were the PIC?
The feeling of management was because I had such a large following. I printed out the other day, when I left that pharmacy, when I went on probation, the pharmacy average was 561 prescriptions a day. Pharmacy average of that pharmacy now is 302 prescriptions a day. It's went down 260 prescriptions a day since I've left. So a lot of those people that came, they came for me, my expertise, and my caring. So they said that if you stayed here, everybody would still keep coming to you and would put pressure on any new PIC who would feel intimidated by your presence. Also, I was very happy to go to this other Walgreens. I did realize I did need to step down. My blood pressure was barely under control. It was actually kind of high. I was on a pretty good regimen, but it still wasn't working. I didn't feel happy there. And so it just felt like I needed to change. And I was kind of scared to change because that's what I did for 22 years. But it also was kind of invigorating. And as my wife said, hey, we'll see you on Christmas, we'll see you on Thanksgiving, we'll see you on all the holidays. You're not going to be coming home at 10:30 at night on a Saturday. You're going to be coming home at 6. So all those things played a big role in me wanting to leave and by no means being a staff pharmacist there.
And so then why stick with Walgreens? Why not go with another pharmacy?
That's a good question. It's like the devil you know versus the devil you don't. I mean, all retail pharmacy, chain pharmacy, it's all pressurized and tough. And, I was good. I mean, I'm fast, I'm good, I'm accurate. I have those qualities. I like my job. If I had to do it over, I'd probably go more into clinical pharmacy because that's kind of where my interests lie now because I'm more interested in that part than just retail. But, to me, retail's what I want to do. I have had job offers to go to infusion pharmacy and things of that nature, but I thought with my wealth of knowledge and my experience, I might as well just use what I have.
One of your patients wrote in the recommendation letter that you actually provided her with a letter to take to her doctors about some medication conflicts that she was having. How many prescriptions do you do a day now? How do you have time to go that deep into a patient's prescription records?
Well, I'm good. I know it. I know it off the top of my head. Like we're a Paxlovid pharmacy right now. So, we're getting Paxlovid prescriptions from Rayleigh's and other places. And I know that, if a patient's on Eliquis or a patient's on alprazolam or a patient's on other medications, I know off the top of my head what the interactions are. For example, the other day I had a lady who has aspergillus in her lungs. She's been on Xanax. She doesn't take a lot of it, but she takes it routinely. Well, voriconazole is a strong CYP3, CYP4 inhibitor, and I knew that Xanax was no good. I didn't have to look that up because I knew her file because she's coming to my pharmacy and I filled her prescriptions. So I made the advice to have her call her doctor immediately and get lorazepam, which is a short-acting glucuronidated benzodiazepine, which would hold her while she's on the voriconazole, so she wouldn't either withdraw or have extra anxiety. Those are the kind of decisions I make rapidly. I also I have a CYP3, CYP4, 2D6 chart on the wall, so I can refer to it quickly. I do it. I know how to jump in a person's profile, alphabetize their drugs, and then go down. I know which drugs are potential issues and which drugs are not. This comes from 41 years of being a pharmacist. In fact, I just got the other day, I got my certificate for 40 years. So when I came out, there was very few drugs. Aldomet and Inderol were the big blood pressure pills. Now those have totally fallen out of favor, so I've kept on top of it. And I have drug interactions on my phone, which I use that in clinical pharmacology, and I usually have it ready to open so I can just type in the drugs. I have a Paxlovid app from Liverpool that I use for that. I have the CDC Pneumovax recommendations. So I have a lot of apps and a lot of things handy that I can call up information rapidly.
And then you mentioned you looked at the records from your old pharmacy, and they've gone down approximately 200 prescriptions a day since you left.
There's
For your
other
new
fact-
pharmacy.
There's other factors.
Mr. Boggs, you need to let her finish her question before you jump in with an answer, okay?
I do apologize.
That's okay. Go ahead, Ms. Jarvis.
Did you happen to run the numbers from your new pharmacy to see if they went up in prescriptions when you moved over there?
They have gone up. We were when I started that, when I was at that pharmacy, we were the slowest pharmacy. We were a teaching pharmacy. We had interns, we had new technicians, we had new pharmacists. We would train them. Once I went on probation, that stopped. Now I think we're like ahead of 4 or 5 pharmacies. So we've climbed up the ladder now, and we've probably picked up, I don't know, 25, 30% since I've been there. It's not just me. We have a great staff. I have an incredible PIC. She's just wonderful. We have a wonderful staff. We've had people that have been there for years, so it's certainly not myself, certainly not. But I have picked up a lot of patients from my old pharmacy because they know that they don't have to tell the next pharmacist their story. I've been with them for years, and they know that I know their situation. And a lot of people don't like to repeat it. Also, when I was at the other pharmacy, we had quite a few HIV patients, and I ended up with a lot of those because we didn't, have stigma with them. We treated them like human beings. They felt very comfortable coming to our pharmacy, and we were actually an HIV center of excellence when I was there. When I left, we lost that thing because I had to be certified by, College of Buffalo for HIV medications, and then some other pharmacists left, and then they didn't have enough certifications to be a center of excellence. But at the other pharmacy, we had quite a bit of HIV patients, and we're starting to pick up some more at this new one.
Thank you. I have no further questions.
All right, very good. In that case, I will turn to the board, and I know Dr. O wants to go last, so I'm not forgetting him. I'll keep him for the end. Dr. Serpa, any questions for Mr. Boggs?
Yes, thank you. Dr. Boggs, I'm very impressed with what your review of patient profiles and assisting patients. But one of the things that came in your record was concerns about consultation and actually sharing information with patients. So what have you done differently, or what do you see the process of consultation being that you are now providing a good consultation to patients?
I don't want to go back in time and complain, but first of all, the one person who I gave the bad information to, I had that board person right in my ear listening into when I was talking. I got very nervous, and I accidentally misspoke. I said one drug was raised and one drug was not. It was the other way around. And then, I know that if I wouldn't have had that board person like right next to me while I was talking to this patient, I know that wouldn't have happened. The second patient that she said that I did not talk to her about the dosage increase. I did mention it, but she had related to me. We had a double drive-through at the old pharmacy, and she was in lane 2, which makes it hard to hear because basically you pick up a phone and talk to them on the phone. It's not ideal. I'm not a big fan of drive-through, but you got people with kids, people that are disabled, people that right now have COVID, they're coming in to get their Paxlovid. A drive-through is a good thing. Plus, they're not, polluting the waiting area. But anyway, so I told her, I said, hey, they've doubled your dosage from 20 to 40 milligrams. And she says, I know, I've been taking that dose for 2 months. The doctor just, finally made it official and upped it on the record. I said, hey, great, fine. That was it. That was my consultation. Now the inspector said, hey, you should have went in to watch your potassium. You have a greater chance of side effects, dizziness, lightheadedness. And I was remiss. I should have brought that up. And in the future, I mean, and you know, going forward for that, those words stuck in the back of my head. And when I did talk to somebody about a dosage increase, like say Lexapro 10 to Lexapro 20, Olmesartan 5 to Olmesartan 20, I did say, hey, they're increasing your dose. And I will also say, remember, your side effects might increase also to get the effect. So that was one thing where that did help me. The third one was where somebody picked up a medication in the car. There was a dosage change, and I forgot to put that little paper on. It said, you know, if you have any questions, call the pharmacy. And that was on me. I made that mistake. You know, it was busy. They were asking all these questions. I just, you know, I was remiss, you know, bottom line. So it was a mistake. But as far as my consulting goes, I've been known as a consulting pharmacist. That's why we were busy. That's why people knew they could call me. I did a lot of stuff over the phone because I could still work and talk on the phone. And I still do, you know, so like I said, if I don't get the probation terminated, I'm still gonna practice the same way. So that's not gonna change. In fact, I've gotten a lot better, and it's because
maybe you can walk me through what's your consultation process in your pharmacy. You know, working with the technician, handing out the medications, and when do you get involved, and what patients do you highlight to consult?
That's great. Well, obviously, you're going to consult anybody who asks for it, anybody who has a new drug, anybody who has a change in dosage, anybody who has potential interaction, and you're going to go over, well, first of all, the prescription now says NTT, which means new to therapy on it. So it says new on it. So our technicians say, the pharmacist would like to talk to you. So I just go over either to the drive-through or I have them go to the consultation window. So it's a little more HIPAA compliant. And I just say, hi, is this a new prescription for you? And they'll say, no, I've had it before. I used to go to Walmart and I'm going to you, or I was getting it mail order. Or they'll say, no, it is new. And then we'll go into the consultation. So I'll say, first thing I'll say is, what has the doctor told you about it? What do you know about it? Many times they'll say, well, and they won't say much. So what I'll go through is, first thing would be side effects. I'm going to warn about the adverse interactions. Then if it's more of a drug that has a slow onset, like an SSRI, I'll say, here's the time to where it's going to work. I'll go into, obviously, is there any foods that interact with it? Like some drugs can be taken with food, some drugs should be on an empty stomach. And then I'll also kind of maybe go into something. I always tailor my consultation to what I would want to know. Like right now, I would say, hey, it's hot out. SSRIs make, they raise the set point in your temperature hypothalamus. So I'll say, watch the heat. Or else if somebody's got a medication like, let's say, Septra, and it's going to probably upset their stomach, I'll say, hey, if that stuff upsets your stomach, you can go ahead and take it with food because the absorption isn't going to be changed. And so I don't exactly, I have kind of a consultation thing, but pretty much I have the board consultation right there on the little screen. So I always kind of refer to that, and I make sure that I go all through the stuff the State Board of Pharmacy wants for consulting. But I usually start with what do you know? And then really adverse reactions are the most important. If a person wants to know a lot, I'll go as deep as they want to go. Like I've gone pretty deep on stuff with people, talking about half-lives, why telmisartan might be a better choice than losartan, why some drug might have a little bit of side effects down the line, like amlodipine, and what to watch out for, say edema, maybe in a few months. And then, so then I also talk about acute side effects, like this drug might upset your stomach, it might make you nauseated, like example, Trintellix, which of SSRIs has the highest amount of nausea associated with it of SSRIs. So I'm probably gonna maybe lean towards what that drug in that class is, because some things are class effects. Like if I'm gonna give a sartan, I'm gonna just give a sartan speech. But I might tell somebody with losartan, hey, it's got a very short half-life. You should take your blood pressure at 12-hour intervals. If you're finding out your blood pressure isn't holding, talk to your doctor, because sometimes that dose should be twice a day. It's real touchy telling doctors, making points of emphasis to the doctors. I just find out that I'll make them, and sometimes they'll take my recommendations, and sometimes they won't. But it doesn't bother me. I figure they're the one that has the license to prescribe. All I can do is the best for my patients. So consulting is very simple. If it's a new prescription, they just call us over, and that's it. And if the patient says, hey, I've had it, we're good. Any questions? Everything's good. There you go. Nope, I don't have it. Then I'm going to dive into the consultation, which is what I tried to do at the old pharmacy. But, you're doing a lot of prescriptions, things were more apt to slip through. Plus, it was a bigger physical plant. There was a greater distance between the pharmacist and the consultation area. So it was a big pharmacy. This pharmacy is a lot smaller.
And in your current pharmacy, do you fill hospice prescriptions?
Not at all.
None.
Not at
Okay.
all. Why did we fill hospice prescriptions? Because 24-hour pharmacy, morphine at 11 o'clock at night, morphine on a Sunday morning, can't get a hold of the regular doctor. We never made any quality errors. We made one quality error on that, on hospice prescriptions since I was there. People in the community were very happy we provided that 24-hour service. So we got into that hospice thing. And again, looking in the past, which I don't want to do, I did not keep up with the 11159.2 going to a 11167.5. And unfortunately, I didn't take it seriously on my PIC every other year worksheet. And I said we were compliant when we weren't. And now I realize that that was a grave error. So I should have dove into the hospice and made sure we were doing it correctly. This was before the advent of electronic prescriptions and things of that nature. And they weren't going to wake up a doctor at 11 o'clock at night on a Saturday night and get a morphine over for a dying patient. You know, all these patients did end up, you know, I mean, most of them have all succumbed.
What about nursing homes? Do you have any nursing home prescriptions that you deliver to them?
Not nursing homes. We do have some people that live in assisted care facilities, but they're, you know, they're independent. They're like a little apartment thing. You know, they make up their own apartment, but they get a couple meals a day, but no nursing homes.
Okay, great. Well, thank you. Appreciate your time and your dedication.
Yeah, you bet.
All right, thank you. Ms. Cameron Banks, any questions?
None, thank you.
All right, very good. Dr. Crowley, questions?
Yes, I do have a few questions.
Mm-hmm.
So it sounds like you have a pretty extensive clinical knowledge. I'm curious to see the reason for the non-compliance with hospice requirements. Was it a misunderstanding of the law? Something else, maybe other factors? And then a follow-up question to that is, how has your knowledge of law and compliance changed since your discipline?
Those are great questions. First of all, hospice. Problem was, the rules of hospice changed from when we started the hospice in 2004. Now, we started the hospice program in 1995 because the hospice people came to us and they said that, you know, we're not getting nighttime deliveries, we're not getting weekend deliveries, patients are suffering. And then Walgreens was like, yeah, we're 24/7, you know, we'll do it. So we got it all together, we got this protocol thing, they said everything was good. And so then that was what happened. So then the laws changed, but I wasn't up on the law, I wasn't up on a hospice law. I did read it, I thought we were compliant, I was wrong, bottom line. So what happened was with that is this hospice claimed that they were actually doing it correctly. So I had to actually go to the hospice place many, many times to get them on board because they felt that the law that they were abiding by the law on their end, not realizing that the law was not being abided on our end. And these doctors signing a protocol. Now, it did say in there that we were deviating for the protocol. All those prescriptions were all off the protocol. So they would give us a protocol and say, this is all you can prescribe. That's all you can do. You can't deviate. So nothing was ever deviated from. I don't know where that came from, and I really don't care. Again, we weren't compliant, and that's what the deal was. So that's why we got out of compliance with hospice. And then she says, well, you were using 11159.2, you should have been using 11167.5. Well, that's what they were putting on the hospice sheet. So again, I assumed, you know, not what I should have been doing, that was correct. Again, the hospice was not a big part of our business. The hospice was mostly weekends, nighttime, and when people were dying, and they would send over these orders, or they would call us and say, we're sending over. A delivery person or a nurse would pick up the order, take it to the patient, and usually that was it. We just didn't have people on hospice for like months and months. The other pharmacies in town were also doing more of the daytime ones. The independents that were delivering were doing the bulk of it. Because we didn't deliver, we had to have everything picked up. And what was the second half of the question then?
The second half was how your knowledge of law and compliance has changed since your discipline.
Well, I think it's just more of an interest in it, and I have done a ton of extra law. I've gone to I wasn't a member of CPHA until I got on probation, and that was a good thing because CPHA is a wonderful organization, and they have a lot of law. They have a lot of law seminars where you go like 6 hours or 4 hours, or you go to these, webinars. And the state boards had a real wonderful one just this year that was 6 hours. And this is more the living law. This is a guy who knows what he's talking about. He's like telling me like, here's how it, you read the law, it's pretty dry. And then, and so now you just like, here's the living law. Here's how you put it in. Here's a red flag. Here's what to watch out for. So I went, and I've also took extra law CE because that was part of my remedial education. And I made sure that every time a new law came out, I was, when the new laws came out, I got the new laws. I read the script like, everybody should. And then I also, went to the webinars that the board put out of the new laws of like, 20 or 19, 20, 21, and 22. I never did that I never did that before. I just did the bare minimum CE because I was always so busy, and the law that I was really working on was the law that I really used all the time. Like, what's a legal substitution? Is this a legal security blank? What's missing off the security blank? Those were the things I was more attuned to, and not the overall, hey, the unusual situation where something's out of alignment. So I would say it's more of diving more into it and also being more aware of it, and also going to webinars where these I guess they're usually a lawyer for like pharmacists, or they work for the board, and they really give you some great real life scenarios and like, what would you do, and then that's where you can kind of apply the law to it. So I'd never done that till I got probation.
Great, thank you. I know you did mention that there was no deviation from protocol. The original case number has multiple specific examples of change in directions on prescriptions that were dispensed versus the protocol. I don't want to really harp on that too much. You've already said that.
Mistakes were made. It was an oversight.
Mr. Boggs.
Again, everything I was.
Mr. Boggs.
I'm sorry.
Mr. Boggs.
Talking again.
You need to let people finish what they're saying before you start answering your question. So Dr. Crowley, once more, please.
Yeah, I was just saying, I don't want to linger on that too much. I know you've already said that, you've made a mistake in that area and you thought you were compliant when you weren't. I do want to say, as someone who has had to place family in hospice care, I understand how difficult it is transitioning into hospice care, finding providers who are familiar with it, and sometimes getting your medication. So although you did make some mistakes, I appreciate how much you were helping families in your community, because it is a really difficult situation to be going on. It's a very emotional time. And we really do need providers who are knowledgeable and compliant, or can help us get medications in those situations.
We got many, go ahead, sorry.
Oh, no, you can
I was
go.
just gonna say, we got many thank you letters. Many people came in, were crying. They lost their, they thanked us, what we did, what we were, why we were there. It was very rewarding. Again, we weren't the major person because other pharmacies were carrying the bulk of it. We were more of the after hours, holidays, nighttime type thing. But yeah, it was very rewarding. And I did have people cry in front of me and stuff like that. And, I've lost a lot of patients. I've been a pharmacist for 40 years. I get patients, remember one of the gals, she made my kid a 49er blanket and she ended up getting pancreatic cancer. And yeah, you lose people and you have to be empathetic. I understand that. I am, it's part of being a pharmacist. Most of my people that came there, they were on the older side, and a lot of them, they were my patients for 20, 30 years, but then that means they're 90.
I just have a couple more questions for you. So I first want to say that as someone who also stepped down from PIC to staff, I can appreciate the freedom that it gives you to explore other interests in pharmacy and the reduction in stress. I'm curious if your blood pressure has returned to normal since you've transitioned to a staff position.
Well, my blood pressure is good now. I did change my meds. I'm on telmisartan and I'm on indapamide, and right now my blood pressure is usually around 124 over about 74, which if you look at the SPRINT trial, you want to be about 130 over 80. So I'm meeting the criteria.
Great.
My wife
is
happier.
Sorry. I don't have any more questions for you, but I did want to congratulate you on your 40 years of practice and thank you for committing yourself to serving Californians.
That's my pleasure. And I tell you, this deal with the COVID, if I can say one more thing, I've really been empowered to, give the injections, promote vaccines. I had a lot of people that were on the fence with vaccines, but, I've talked to them, and, I'll just tell you one little story. This guy was so scared. I told him, hey, it won't be that bad, whatever, give you the shot. This was when it was Alpha, it wasn't even Delta yet. And, he got the shot and then, he came back and he was crying and said, what's going on? He goes, my brother died of COVID. And he goes, then I got really sick, but he had that one vaccine, he was on his first dose. So, and I tell people that story. I know the guy, people that are getting vaccines is saving lives. Now you got Paxlovid, 89% effective in the first 5 days. You have Evishield, which is, somebody's immunocompromised and they're not responding to vaccines. I talked to them, hey, see if you can get Evishield. There's a lot of options out there to really save people's lives. And I like being in the middle of that right now. I don't look at the COVID as a bad thing. Well, it is a bad thing, but it looks to me, it's like an opportunity to at least help a little bit.
Thank you.
Thank you for that. Mr. De La Paz, any questions?
None for me at this time, Judge.
Okay, very good. Ms. Koenig?
None for me.
All right, Mr. Sanchez?
No questions.
Okay, very good. Dr. Thebo?
Yes, I just wanted to say congratulations on 40 years and thank you so much for your service.
I filled a lot of scripts.
Okay, very good. Thank you. And Mr. White, any questions?
None, Your Honor. Thank you.
All right, then back to Dr. O.
Dr. Box, thank you for coming today and quite an impressive presentation for you. So just wondering, I'm not trying to put a blame on anything or whatever happened in the past. Like you said, I just want to understand. Sounds like you said your practice that you got a violation for was clear by Walgreens?
What do you mean?
Did the compliance department at Walgreens approved what you were doing?
I think the problem was we had too many supervisors and one supervisor approved it. And then we had different supervisors and they really didn't follow up until this whole thing came down. And then we got another supervisor and then he and I sat down and we worked with the hospice to make sure that we were compliant. So we were compliant going forward. 3 years later, the same inspector that had been on the initial inspection came back and looked through all the hospice prescriptions that we'd done since we were since that December 2015. She came back in December 18. It might be in the report. And she did find 7 instances of all the prescriptions we filled that had discrepancies and we weren't following the procedures that we said we would. 1 was filled by me, that was my error, and 6 were filled by pharmacists that were floater pharmacists that came in on days, when we had vacations or had days off. So we did follow up. We did work with the hospice, and Walgreens did drill down, and also they did revise a lot of they did get through and really delineate a lot of the changes going forward to make sure that other people didn't have the issue that I did. So once they were aware of this, we're up here in Chico. Most of the people are down there. We're going real good. It was never really an issue. I had been inspected many times before. Nobody had ever people had looked at those prescriptions, and this was the first inspector that really got into the fact that we were doing it incorrectly. So, obviously, they are somewhat to blame, and that's why the store's on probation. So they were to blame. But I take most of the blame because I was the pharmacist in charge, and I should have known better. I should have been more forthright, and I should have went more to the hospice, and I should not have signed on the PIC saying the self-assessment. I should not have said that we're following the 1167.5 when we weren't. That error was on me.
Thank you. So it seems like this is one of the possible examples of how much of responsibility that as being a PIC you are held to a certain level of standard. So I think that if you are open to it, I think you should definitely talk to a lot of students and try to, let them know what happened, and hopefully you can share your experiences with pharmacy schools for educational purposes. So just at your old store, were you the one that was, it sounds like, and congratulations and thank you for serving 40 years, more than 40 years of being a pharmacist. Were you the one that started this program? It sounds like you said you were back there since 90s at the same store?
Well, we opened the store in we opened the store in May of 93. I was the pharmacist in charge and manager in 93, and I went all the way until 2018. So that would have been what, 20
Wow.
Yeah. I was like the frog in the boiling water. The water gets hotter and hotter, but you don't jump out, because it just got progressively busier and tougher. But I just kept putting my head down and trying to keep going forward. And I didn't really do a lot of self-reflection on what it was doing to myself. And that was one of my errors.
And how busy was the store again? Just so I can understand.
Well, the week my probation started, February 16th of 2019, I wasn't there then, but the average prescriptions were 561 a day.
Okay, and how many staff or techs, clerks do you usually get?
At that time, we had 5 full-time pharmacists. We had 3 pharmacists during the day and 2 night pharmacists, so we had 5 pharmacists. As far as technicians, God, I lost count. It's been years ago, maybe 15. I don't know. We had a lot of techs because you had to cover. We had overnight techs because when you're filling 700 prescriptions, the overnight guys just fill in all night for refills and stuff. So we generally had an overnight tech every night of the week. So we had a lot of people working. It was,
okay.
It was a busy place.
Okay, thank you. That's all I have. And again, thank you. Thank you for coming, and you're a very impressive pharmacist, and I appreciate your time, and good luck.
Okay.
All right, with that said, Ms. Jarvis, would you like to make any closing remarks?
Once I find the mute button. Yes, Your Honor.
The floor is yours.
At this time, the Attorney General's office sees no harm to the public by granting this petition. Thank you.
All right, very good. Mr. Boggs, I will give you one final opportunity. Again, no need to repeat, but these are your final closing comments to the board on this petition.
Well, it sounds like buttering you guys up, but realistically, working with the board since I've had these issues has been very rewarding. Instead of being afraid of the board and worrying about stuff because you're kind of in that unknown, you don't know if you're doing stuff right or wrong, if you're just going forward, I've become more aware of the board's mission and what the board stands for. And unfortunately, again, I will talk about James Flores and Victor Macias, and they've been behind me the whole time, giving me advice, helping me. If I have a question, if I have a legal question, it's so awesome. I just email James, bam, back comes like, here's the pertinent thing. Here's what I would do. And so to me, it's been a positive experience. I know that now you might be saying, well, if it's so positive, why don't you stay on probation? Because, I think I've done my 3 years, I paid all my money. I've done everything. I'm not going to stop with the law. I'm not going to stop with the CE. Obviously, I'm going to keep doing that. But I just feel like I would like to clean the slate so I can go onto the website and see that I just don't have that I'm on probation. To me, that is the bottom line. And again, as I said before, it's not going to change how I practice. I'm still going to practice the same way between now and the time I quit. But I think it's just going to make me feel better. And as far as board member O talking about relating that to other people, I might try to do something like that. Now, I always talk to people now. If somebody calls me or a floater comes in or he's just out of school, I do tell them, hey, think about your license. Have hard conversations with patients. You know, just look into everything. Don't let the status quo go. If you're not familiar, if you're not sure of it, don't do it. Make sure you're doing it correctly. So I do give that. But if I had interns coming in, then I could give them that kind of advice. As far as pharmacy schools and stuff, I mean, I'm a busy guy. You know, I still work. I got a home life. You know, if it was something, if somebody came to me, I work mostly with Passages, which is a local Medicare advocacy agency. That's usually where my extra time goes for like community service. But yeah, if somebody approached me and said, "Hey, would you like to talk to these people about, you know, what to do?" Unfortunately, that guy that talked at PBI was so fantastic. But I mean, you know, if you could have more people go through that kind of a thing, it would be helpful and people wouldn't get into trouble. I don't know what the format would be for that or what the cost would be, but a webinar on this kind of information, not just the law, but, you know, just a webinar for PICs like, hey, here's what your extra duties are. Here's what you're responsible for. Just because you're not there, you're the one that has to set the tone for that pharmacy. And obviously I didn't set the tone because when I was gone, the floaters didn't do the hospice thing correctly, even though I had some directions laid out. So I guess my closing thing is thank you. And, you know, I'm just going to go forward. And to me, the whole thing's worked out. So I'm happy. That's it.
All right. Thank you very much. I will take this case as submitted. And of course, Mr. Boggs, thank you for your time, and we'll excuse you. Dr. O, I'll return this to you. I don't know if you'd like to go into closed session immediately or if there's anything else that we need to do.
Yep. Thank you. Thank you, Your Honor. So as indicated on the agenda, the board will now move into closed session for the stated purposes indicated on the agenda. Due to technological limitations, adjournment for the day will not be broadcast. Adjournment for the day will immediately follow closed session, and there will be no other items of business discussed. Members of the public, thank you for joining the meeting today. Members, we will begin closed session in about 10 minutes. 10 minutes. So we'll see you all at 2:10 at
President
closed session.
Hi, this is Jason. I'm sorry. Could we please have staff email us that contact information again?
Oh, absolutely. Yes, Debbie Damuth is going to do that right now.
And that will be a call.
We'll see you all. Right? Yes, conference call. Yeah.
Okay.
All right.
Thank
see
you.
you all at the closed session.
Thank you all for your time and attention today.
Thank you.